Imagine standing at the edge of an ancient, undisturbed woodland just as twilight deepens into velvet night. The sky above is a canvas of deep indigo brushed with the first silver flecks of starlight. Here, the air is distinct. It is thick with the scent of damp earth, crushed moss, and the quiet exhalation of a million green leaves settling into the cool dark. There is no urgency in this place. The wind does not rush. It merely sighs through the uppermost branches, a slow, rhythmic, oceanic sound that sweeps gently from one edge of the horizon to the other. Beneath your feet, the ground is soft, cushioned by centuries of fallen leaves, quietly breaking down into the rich, dark soil that sustains the towering giants all around you. Everything here breathes. Everything here is quietly, deeply alive. As you wander deeper into this emerald sanctuary, the shadows stretch and soften. The world of human concerns, of sharp edges and ticking clocks, dissolves behind you. You're entering a space governed by a different kind of time, a slower, more deliberate tempo where centuries are measured in the rings of timber, and days are simply the gentle turning of light to shadow. As we explore the profound hidden intelligence of this green world, there is absolutely nothing you need to hold on to. You do not need to memorize these truths or try to catch them as they fall. Let your mind soften, like a single autumn leaf drifting on a slow-moving river. Let the ideas and the imagery simply wash over you, pooling where they will. What stays, stays. What drifts away, returns to the earth. You're here only to listen, to rest, and to let the quiet wisdom of the forest carry you downward into deep restorative stillness. Allow your breathing to match the slow, patient rhythm of the trees, inhaling the cool, clean night air and exhaling any lingering tension. We begin our journey not in the branches high above, but deep below the surface, beneath the soft moss and the leaf litter, where an entirely invisible universe is quietly pulsing with conversation. Beneath the forest floor, interlaced with the roots of the great oaks, the ancient pines and the slender birches, lies a vast, luminous web of life. It is a microscopic tapestry of fungal threads, gossamer fine and pale, stretching endlessly through the dark soil. This is not merely a physical structure, but a living, breathing network of connection. A biological internet connecting the forest into one massive, cohesive organism. Through these glowing threads, a towering, sun-drenched tree on the edge of a clearing can share its excess sugar with a struggling sapling shaded in the deep understory. They send water across vast distances, balancing the needs of the whole. It is a community of absolute support, a world where survival is not about the solitary individual, but about the profound, unbreakable bond of the collective. There is a quiet, continuous flow of nourishment moving beneath your feet right now, a silent river of generosity that never ceases. And this intricate web of care extends even to the concept of family. When you look at a meadow bathed in the soft silver light of the moon, you might see a beautiful but random scattering of greenery. Yet, beneath the soil, plants are perfectly aware of who is growing beside them. Through a complex language of chemical signals secreted by their roots, they can distinguish between a stranger and their own kin, seeds that fell from the exact same parent plant. When a plant recognizes its sibling, something remarkable happens. It alters its behavior. Rather than spreading its roots aggressively to claim as much territory as possible, it restrains itself. It politely shares the soil, leaving space and nutrients for its family to thrive alongside it. They grow in harmony, tilting their leaves just slightly so that both can catch the falling sunlight without casting shade on the other. It is a profound, silent empathy coded into their very sap, a reminder that the instinct to nurture, to make room for those we recognize as our own, is an impulse as old as the earth itself. This deep awareness of the surrounding world is not limited to touch or chemicals. It extends beautifully into the realm of sound. Picture a single, delicate flower in a quiet valley, its petals closed softly against the night. We often think of plants as deaf to the symphony of the world, wrapped in a permanent, motionless silence. But if you were to wait until the golden warmth of the morning, you would witness a subtle miracle. Certain flowers, like the evening primrose, are actually listening. Their petals are shaped much like delicate acoustic bowls, perfectly contoured to catch the specific vibrations of the world around them. When the low rhythmic hum of a pollinating bee approaches, the flower senses the vibration in the air. Within minutes, it responds, flooding its nectar with a sudden rich increase in sugar, sweetening its offering for the approaching guest. It does not react to the sound of the wind or the chatter of birds. It waits specifically for the frequency of its companion. To imagine a flower listening to the music of the air is to realize that the forest is not a quiet painting, but a deeply attentive audience, responding to the frequencies of life with a sweet and silent generosity. And just as they listen, they also remember. Imagine a small fern-like plant with delicate feathery leaves, resting in the dappled shade. This is the sensitive plant known for its dramatic response to touch, folding its leaves inward and dropping its branches at the slightest disturbance, a beautiful, instantaneous defense mechanism. But scientists discovered something deeply moving about this small creature. It can learn, and it can remember. If the plant is gently dropped from a short, safe height, it initially closes tight, bracing for harm. But if the harmless drop is repeated, something shifts within the organism. The plant realizes that the sensation, though startling, brings no actual danger. It stops closing. It remains open, relaxed, its leaves perfectly still as it falls. Even more astonishing, if the plant is left completely undisturbed for nearly a month and then dropped again, it still remembers. It remains open. It has held onto the memory of safety. Deep within its cellular structure, without a brain or a nervous system, it has stored the quiet reassurance that it is secure. It is a comforting thought, to know that the natural world holds on to the memory of safety, just as we seek to hold on to the peace of this present moment. This ability to assess the environment extends far beyond memory, reaching up into the very air we breathe. Take a slow, deep breath of the forest air. Inhale the scent of pine needles, of damp bark, of wildflowers closing for the night. What you are smelling is not simply the passive perfume of the woods. You are breathing in the invisible words of the trees. Plants communicate through the air using complex molecular scents, known as volatile organic compounds. When a tree is nibbled by an insect, it does not suffer in silence. It releases a specific aromatic signal into the breeze, an invisible warning that drifts through the canopy to neighbouring trees. Upon catching this scent, the neighbouring trees immediately begin to change their own internal chemistry, producing defensive compounds in their leaves before the insects ever arrive. The forest is constantly talking, whispering warnings and reassurances on the currents of the wind. It is an ethereal language spoken in fragrance, a continuous invisible dialogue that ensures the survival of the many over the isolation of the one. As you drift deeper into relaxation, imagine these invisible waves of scent carrying messages of safety and preparation, a gentle, protective embrace wrapping around the entire woodland. And this mutual respect is visible even when you open your eyes and look up. If you were to lie on your back on the soft forest floor and gaze upward at the canopy of certain ancient forests, you would witness one of nature's most visually stunning phenomena. High above, where the topmost branches of the great trees meet the sky, they do not entangle. They do not clash or crowd one another. Instead, each tree stops growing just inches away from the leaves of its neighbour. This creates a mesmerizing network of illuminated pathways, a web of winding river-like gaps of open sky separating each individual canopy. This is known as crown shyness. It is a botanical courtesy, a way for these giants to ensure that every tree receives its fair share of the falling sunlight, and to prevent the spread of harmful shadows from one branch to another. They respect each other's boundaries with a quiet, majestic grace. Looking up at this cracked glass ceiling of green and blue, you can see a perfect map of coexistence, a society of towering individuals living in absolute proximity, yet granting each other the space to breathe, to sway in the wind, and to grow without friction. It is a profound lesson in harmonious living, written across the sky, guided by an ability that seems almost magical. This delicate dance with the sunlight is made possible because plants, in their own unique way, can see. Embedded within their leaves are sophisticated light-sensing proteins. These molecular eyes do not form images like ours do, but they are incredibly sensitive to the exact quality, intensity, and colour of the light cascading down upon them. A plant knows precisely when the sun rises and when it sets, reading the subtle shifts in the atmosphere. Even more remarkably, by analysing the specific wavelengths of red and far-red light, a plant can tell if the shadow falling across its leaves is cast by a lifeless rock or by a living, competing plant. If it senses the shadow of another plant, it will alter its growth, gently bending and stretching toward the open sky to secure its future. They're constantly reading the atmosphere, bathing in the shifting spectrums of daylight, silently observing the slow, turning kaleidoscope of the world above. Yet as the leaves gaze upward, an equally profound intelligence is reaching downward. While the canopy monitors the sky, the roots are mapping the dark, subterranean world with an intelligence all their own. As a root tip pushes downward, moving through the cool, damp earth, it acts as a highly sensitive navigator. It does not merely grow blindly, hoping to stumble upon water or nutrients by chance. A growing root can sense gravity, mapping the moisture gradients and the intricate chemical signatures of the soil. Astonishingly, roots can also sense physical obstacles, like a dense, impenetrable stone, before they even make contact with them. Sensing the acoustic reflections or minute chemical changes in the soil ahead, the root will gently alter its course, curving smoothly around the stone, saving its precious energy. It is a journey of fluid grace through the total dark, guided by a sensory awareness that feels its way through the world with supreme confidence. It is a beautiful reminder that even in the absolute dark, even when the path ahead seems completely obscured, there is an innate intelligence within life that knows exactly how to navigate and how to gently move forward into the dark. And as the natural world navigates the dark, it also knows how to surrender to it. As the deep night fully settles over the forest, a profound quiet descends, and just as you are drifting into rest, so too is the green world around you. Plants possess their own intricate circadian rhythms, internal biological clocks tuned to the slow, steady rotation of the earth. When the light fades, many plants engage in a beautiful physical act of going to sleep. Leaves that were held flat and wide to catch the sun will slowly, gracefully fold downward, like hands coming together in quiet repose. Flowers pull their delicate petals inward, closing their faces to the cold night air. This nightly ritual is not merely passive, it is an active state of conservation, a time to heal, to process the energy gathered during the day, and to rest deeply. The entire forest enters a state of slumber. Imagine thousands of leaves, all across the whispering woods, quietly lowering themselves, releasing the efforts of the day. They are surrendering to the dark, trusting entirely that the sun will return, perfectly content to exist in this suspended state of peaceful, restorative quiet. You can join them in this surrender, letting your own leaves fold, letting your own efforts fade into the comforting dark. Yet, even in this deep botanical sleep, there is a gentle, enduring pulse. For a long time it was believed that trees in the night were completely rigid, moving only when pushed by the wind. But recent discoveries have revealed something deeply poetic. Trees have a heartbeat. Over the course of the night, the branches of many trees slowly sag downward, sometimes by several inches, as they rest under the canopy of stars. Then, in the deepest, quietest hours before dawn, they softly rise again. This incredibly slow rhythmic movement is the tree acting as a massive silent pump, circulating water from its deep hidden roots all the way up to its highest sleeping canopy. It is a pulse that takes hours to complete a single beat. Imagine leaning your back against the massive ridged trunk of an ancient oak and feeling, deep within the wood, this infinitely slow, calming expansion and contraction. The forest is not entirely still. It is breathing. It is pulsing with a slow, steady heartbeat, a rhythm of survival and endurance that has kept time since the very beginning of the world. Let your own heart align with this deep, earthen pulse, slow, steady, and perfectly at peace. As that deep, earthen pulse continues its quiet rhythm through the wood, it carries with it a profound awareness of time passing. The trees around you are not simply existing in a timeless void. They possess a deep, elegant memory of the shifting seasons. Consider the stillness of a forest locked in the very heart of winter. The landscape is draped in a heavy, undisturbed mantle of white snow, and the branches appear to be in a state of suspended, frozen sleep. Yet, within the dormant buds and the seeds buried beneath the frost, a careful accounting is taking place. Through a delicate process called vernalization, the plant is actively feeling the cold, and more importantly, it is remembering it. A seed will often refuse to sprout, and a branch will completely refuse to blossom until it has recorded a very specific number of continuously freezing days. It holds onto this memory at a cellular level, knowing that a brief, random afternoon of January sunshine is only a false promise. It waits patiently for the true, enduring thaw of spring. It is a beautiful biological patience, a reminder that there is no need to rush into the light before the environment is ready to support you. Sometimes, the most natural and productive thing we can do is simply rest, gathering our energy in the quiet dark. When that dark eventually gives way to the warmth of the warmer months, the landscape shifts and the voice of the forest changes with it. We tend to think of plants as completely mute, but when the heat of summer stretches on and the soil grows dry, the vegetation begins to softly sing. Hidden deep within the rigid stems of plants and the trunks of towering trees, tiny columns of water are pulled upward from the roots. When water is scarce, the tension inside these microscopic tubes increases until a tiny, invisible bubble of air suddenly forms and expands. This tiny event, known as cavitation, releases a sharp, high-frequency acoustic pop. During a dry spell, a single field can become a symphony of these rapid, ultrasonic clicks. While the sound is far too high-pitched for human ears to catch, it is an audible hum to the surrounding ecosystem. Certain moths and insects can hear this subtle music of thirst, choosing to fly past the singing plants and lay their eggs elsewhere. Even in their most vulnerable moments, the plants are broadcasting their inner state, radiating a quiet, acoustic honesty into the shimmering summer air. As the air currents shift and the wind rises to rustle the canopy, you might wonder how a tree, carrying tons of heavy wood and a massive sail of leaves, avoids simply collapsing under its own weight or tangling its limbs in the breeze. The secret lies in a profound internal awareness known as proprioception. Just as you know exactly where your arm is even when your eyes are closed, a tree possesses a keen sense of its own physical form in space. It can feel the exact weight and angle of every branch. If a heavy limb begins to lean too far to one side, risking the balance of the entire structure, the tree silently goes to work. It lays down specialized, highly reinforced layers of what is called reaction wood. On one side of the trunk it pushes, on the other it pulls, creating a masterpiece of living engineering that acts as a flexible counterweight. The tree is constantly feeling its own posture, making infinitely slow, micro-adjustments to remain perfectly anchored and gracefully upright against the turning of the earth. As the tree finds its perfect balance in the wind, allowing its heavy branches to settle into absolute stability, so too can your own body sink heavier into the softness beneath you. You can let go of the need to hold yourself up. Allow the mattress to take your weight completely. Your breath can slow to match the gentle swaying rhythm of the branches, your mind simply drifting through the foliage. If we were to drift downward, leaving the temperate woods and entering the soft emerald mist of a southern rainforest, we would encounter a plant that takes this physical awareness to an astonishing level. Climbing up the damp bark of the jungle trees is a delicate winding vine known as Buquilla trifoliolata. As this vine reaches upward, seeking the dappled light of the canopy, it performs an act of botanical magic. It shape-shifts. The vine will alter the size, the precise shape, and even the colour of its own leaves to perfectly mimic the leaves of the specific tree it happens to be climbing. It does this to hide from foraging insects blending flawlessly into its host. Yet, the most hypnotic aspect of this mimicry is that the vine often never touches the leaves it is copying. Without eyes, without a brain, it somehow perceives the exact dimensions of its neighbour across the empty air. Whether it is reading an invisible cloud of volatile scents, or utilising some microscopic, unknown form of light-sensing vision, it dissolves the boundary between itself and its environment. It becomes a mirror to the world around it, a quiet master of empathy and adaptation, resting perfectly disguised in the damp green shadows. Following the trailing end of that vine all the way down to the dark, rich soil of the jungle floor, we find that the unseen world is alive with navigation. Beneath the earth, the roots of many common plants, like young corn or sprouting peas, are engaged in their own quiet form of exploration. As their root tips push through the damp, granular earth, they emit a rhythmic, incredibly soft clicking sound. It is a slow, steady metronome echoing in the microscopic caverns of the dirt. Scientists have discovered that these roots are not just making noise, they are listening to it. They will actively grow and lean toward the source of similar clicking frequencies, using the soil as a vast acoustic chamber. They are effectively echolocating in the pitch black, feeling out the shape of the underground world through the gentle reverberation of sound. It is a deeply comforting thought to realize that even in the absolute dark, buried under layers of heavy earth, life is never truly blind. It knows exactly how to feel its way forward, trusting the quiet echoes of the world to guide it safely home. This deep trust in the surrounding world is intimately tied to the way plants experience the passage of time, particularly the daily transition between light and shadow. As the days gradually shorten and the air cools, the canopy knows precisely when to begin changing its colours, cascading from green to gold and amber. They achieve this through a remarkable mechanism called photoperiodism, which is driven by a light-sensitive pigment called phytochrome. But the true beauty of this mechanism is that the plant is not actually measuring the amount of daylight it receives. Instead, it is meticulously counting the exact hours of uninterrupted darkness. It is an internal, molecular hourglass that only pours in the dark. As the shadows lengthen with the approaching autumn, the unbroken stretches of night allow specific chemical changes to slowly accumulate within the leaves. When the night reaches a specific critical length, the tree receives the signal to prepare for the great slumber of winter. The forest measures the turning of the year not by the brilliance of the sun, but by resting deeply in the quiet, undisturbed expanse of the night. Just as the trees measure the comforting length of the darkness, there is no need for you to measure the hours of the night. You can simply let the time wash over you. Your mind can release the day, allowing the darkness to become a soft, heavy blanket. There is nowhere to be, and absolutely nothing that needs to be held too tightly. When a deeply rooted tree finally reaches the end of its long, centuries-old life, its departure is not a moment of sudden loss, but an act of profound, quiet generosity. Deep within the old-growth forests, when a massive elder tree, perhaps a giant Douglas fir or a sweeping oak, begins to yellow and fade, it initiates a beautiful final chapter. Recognizing that its time in the sun is drawing to a close, the dying tree opens its root systems to the vast fungal network connecting the forest floor. it begins to systematically empty its own reserves. It pumps decades of hoarded carbon, rich sugars, and vital minerals down into the soil, pushing these precious resources outward into the web. It actively targets the youngest, most vulnerable saplings growing in its deep shade, feeding them the strength they need to one day take its place in the canopy. The elder tree slowly dismantles itself to ensure the survival of the surrounding community. It is a stunning realization that in the deep forest there is no true end, only a graceful transition of energy. The giant does not simply fall, it dissolves into a legacy of nourishment, continuing to live on in the vibrant green leaves of the generations that follow. While the ancient giants slowly pass their wisdom into the soil, other plants are engaged in a much faster, more visible dance with the energy of the world. In the sunlit clearings of tropical Asia, there grows a slender, unassuming shrub known as the telegraph plant. If you were to sit quietly beside it on a warm, humid afternoon, you would notice something entirely mesmerizing. Its leaves are never truly still. Flanking the main leaf are two smaller lateral leaflets that are in a state of continuous hypnotic motion. Powered by tiny motor cells at their base that rhythmically pump water in and out, these small leaves slowly trace wide elliptical circles in the air. They sweep upward, outward, and downward, a slow-motion, silent ballet. They do this to constantly sample the intensity of the light and the warmth of the air, adjusting their angle to find the absolute perfect position of grace. To watch them is to be drawn into a living meditation. They are a physical manifestation of a slow, deep breath, constantly moving, constantly adjusting, bathed in the tranquil warmth of the afternoon sun, finding harmony in their own gentle rhythm. Even when the harmony of the plant is temporarily disturbed, its response is one of elegant, coordinated calm. When a hungry caterpillar begins to quietly nibble on the edge of a broad green leaf, the plant does not possess the ability to run or swat the insect away. Instead, it relies on a breathtakingly precise language of scent. The moment the leaf is bitten, the plant analyzes the specific saliva of the insect. Once it identifies the exact species of caterpillar, it releases a highly customized, fragrant plume of volatile oils into the breeze. This invisible perfume drifts through the forest like a silent, beautifully orchestrated cry for help. It is specifically designed to attract a predatory wasp or a foraging bird that preys exclusively on that exact type of caterpillar. Within hours, the summoned guardian arrives, drawn by the scent to clear the leaves of danger. It is an intricate tritrophic interaction, a three-part harmony of ecosystem defense. The plant trusts entirely that if it calls out with clarity, the vast interconnected web of the environment will provide exactly what is needed to restore the balance. As you sink even deeper into the softness of your bed, you too are held by a vast web of quiet support. You are entirely safe in this space. The quiet rhythm of the night surrounds you, a gentle guardian keeping watch while your body repairs, processes, and rests. This profound sense of connection and shared existence finds its ultimate expression on a high, rolling mountainside in the American West. If you were to walk through the Fish Lake National Forest in Utah during the crisp days of autumn, you would find yourself surrounded by a shimmering golden ocean of quaking aspen trees. Their white trunks stretch as far as the eye can see, their leaves trembling like thousands of tiny coins in the wind. To the eye, it appears to be a vast woodland composed of over 40,000 individual trees. But beneath the soil, a different truth is revealed. Every single one of those trunks sprouts from one single, massive, interconnected root system. They share the same identical DNA. They share the same water. They share the same life. This is Pando, a Latin word meaning I spread. It is not a forest. It is a single, unimaginably vast organism. Pando has been living on that mountainside, surviving fires, droughts, and the slow grind of ice ages for over 80,000 years. When one trunk falls, another rises, fueled by the endless, eternal energy of the collective root. Standing within Pando is standing inside an ancient dreaming mind. It is the ultimate realization that the illusion of separation is just that, an illusion. Beneath the surface, everything is quietly, beautifully and enduringly connected, waiting to carry us further into the soft unfolding mysteries of the deep green world. That quiet, enduring connection beneath the soil of the ancient aspen grove is not merely a physical structure. It is a living conduit for a language written in pure, crackling energy. If we were to zoom in past the sprawling roots and the delicate fungal threads, down to the very cellular membrane of a single leaf, we would witness a phenomenon that challenges the very boundary between plant and animal. When a leaf is bruised by the wind or grazed by a passing deer, it does not passively endure the injury. It reacts with a flash of brilliant internal lightning. The plant releases a sudden wave of glutamate, the exact same neurotransmitter that sparks across the synapses of your own human brain when you form a thought or feel a sensation. This chemical trigger initiates a rapid electrical pulse that sweeps through the entire vascular system of the plant, racing down the stem and into the roots in a matter of seconds. It is a nervous system composed not of neurons, but of sap and cellulose. To realize that the green world uses the very same chemical language to feel and respond to its environment is to understand that the gap between our bodies and the forest is an illusion. We're all moving, feeling and resting to the same fundamental electric rhythms of life. This invisible energy is not confined to the internal veins of leaves and stems. It radiates outward, transforming the delicate faces of wildflowers into glowing beacons of light. Imagine a meadow in the late afternoon, painted with the soft watercolour hues of lavender, yarrow and goldenrod. To our eyes, it is a landscape of colour and fragrance. But to a foraging bumblebee, it is a landscape of magnetic pull. As bees fly through the air, the friction of their wings charges their small fuzzy bodies with positive electricity. Flowers rooted in the deep earth are naturally grounded and carry a faint negative electric charge. When the bee approaches a bloom, this invisible electrical field pulls the positively charged pollen grains straight through the air, jumping from the stamen to the bee's body before she even lands. Yet, the true marvel happens after she leaves. The flower, sensing the transfer, immediately alters its own electrical field. It dims its invisible electric glow, signalling to the next passing bee that its nectar has already been gathered, saving the insect a wasted journey. The meadow is a shimmering matrix of energetic communication, constantly updating and adjusting in perfect, quiet harmony. As you let your breath deepen, sinking further into the comforting gravity of your resting place, notice how your own body naturally seeks its own quiet equilibrium. You can release the electric hum of the day, letting your thoughts soften and dim, just like the petals resting in the twilight. You are held safely, with nothing to do but drift. As the twilight deepens and the meadow cools, we turn our gaze to the sprawling fields of agriculture, where one of nature's most iconic blooms is engaged in an act of profound biological trust. The sunflower is famous for its heliotropism, tracing the slow arc of the sun from east to west throughout the long summer days. It bathes its golden face in the warmth, following the light with a patient, sweeping grace. But the true intelligence of the sunflower is revealed not in the light, but in the dark. When the sun slips below the horizon and the sky turns an inky, star-studded black, the sunflower does not simply wait in the position where the light left it. Powered by an intricate internal circadian clock, the flower begins a slow, deliberate journey backward through the night. It turns its heavy head, sweeping across the dark sky, to face east once again. It does this long before the first hint of morning light breaks the horizon. It is a movement of pure anticipation. The sunflower knows with absolute cellular certainty that the dawn will return. It positions itself perfectly to catch the very first rays of the new day. It is a stunning display of trust in the natural cycles of the universe, a reminder that even in the deepest hours of the dark, the light is already on its way. This ability to anticipate the future extends beyond the simple tracking of the sun. It reaches into the complex realm of associative memory. Picture a small, fragile pea seedling, its delicate tendrils gently uncurling as it reaches upward in a quiet, climate-controlled sanctuary. Scientists seeking to understand the limits of plant cognition place these tender seedlings in a maze shaped like a Y. They introduced a simple rhythmic breeze from a small fan and always followed that breeze with a warm, nourishing beam of light. After repeating this gentle sequence, they changed the pattern. They introduced only the soft hum of the fan, plunging the maze into total darkness. Astonishingly, the pea plants did not grow randomly into the void. They grew deliberately toward the fan. They had learned. They had formed a classical Pavlovian association, remembering that the feeling of the moving air promised the arrival of light. Without a brain, without a centralized nervous system, this small green sprout possessed the ability to learn from its past, to predict its future, and to make a calculated decision in the dark. It is a testament to the quiet, brilliant adaptability that pulses through every stem and leaf on Earth. This profound sensitivity requires an equally profound ability to discern exactly what is happening in the surrounding world. Imagine a tropical rainforest canopy, where the leaves are as broad as dining tables, designed to catch whatever sunlight pierces the gloom. The sky darkens, the clouds open, and a heavy drumming tropical rain begins to fall. For a plant, physical touch often signals a threat. A climbing vine, a browsing herbivore, a chewing insect. But the plant must not waste its precious energy reacting to every drop of rain. Through a process called thigmomorphogenesis, plants have learned to perfectly filter the sensory input of their world. When the first few heavy drops strike a leaf, the plant registers the impact, sending a cascade of internal signals. But as the rain continues, forming a steady rhythmic patter, the plant recognizes the pattern. It realizes the touch is harmless, a natural rhythm of the weather, and it simply stops reacting. It tunes out the noise, it relaxes into the downpour, letting the water wash over it without panic, without a defensive response. It has learned the delicate art of letting go. Just as the broad leaves of the canopy learn to ignore the harmless patter of the rain, you too can allow the small passing thoughts of the mind to simply wash over you. There is no need to react, no need to brace yourself against the current. Let the mental noise become a distant, soothing rhythm, fading away as you drift deeper into profound, undisturbed calm. When the rain clears and the heavy, humid scent of the damp earth rises into the air, the forest engages in a deeply invisible layer of communication. Scents in the plant world are not merely passive perfumes, they are a highly specific directional language. Consider the dodder vine, a delicate pale yellow thread of a plant that possesses no roots in the earth and no green leaves to harvest the sun. To survive, it must find a host plant within the first few days of its fragile life, or it will perish. To navigate this high-stakes journey, the dodder vine relies entirely on an incredibly sophisticated sense of smell. It blindly waves its delicate tip through the air, acting as an olfactory antenna, actively sniffing the volatile chemicals drifting on the breeze. If it is placed between a wheat plant and a tomato plant, the vine does not grow randomly. It actively rejects the chemical signature of the wheat. Instead, it senses the sweet, complex aroma of the tomato plant, and with slow, creeping precision, it slithers directly toward its chosen target. It is a hunter guided entirely by scent, reading the invisible chemical topography of the air to find exactly what it needs to survive. While the dodder vine hunts through the humid air, other plants use their energy to create environments of astonishing warmth and comfort. Imagine a perfectly still pond, its surface mirroring the pale grey light of a crisp early spring morning. Frost still clings to the edges of the reeds, and the air is sharp and cold. Yet, Rising from the centre of the dark water is the sacred lotus, its massive pink-tipped petals fully open. This ancient revered flower possesses a miraculous ability known as thermoregulation. Deep within its golden centre, the lotus is actively burning stored carbohydrates, acting as a living botanical furnace. Even if the air temperature drops to near freezing, the lotus maintains an internal temperature of a perfectly balmy 85 degrees Fahrenheit. It creates a warm, fragrant oasis in the middle of the cold, inviting pollinating beetles to crawl inside its petals. The beetles enter this floral sanctuary to eat, to mate, and to sleep, entirely protected from the harshness of the outside world. The flower offers a blanket of heat, a safe, glowing refuge against the cold. It is an act of deep hospitality, a living testament to the lengths that life will go to comfort and sustain the creatures it relies upon. This instinct to protect and sustain extends far below the surface of the pond, back into the intricate subterranean networks that bind the green world together. When we look at a field of crops or a dense thicket of wild shrubs, we see individual plants, but their root systems are constantly exchanging vital, life-saving information. If a single plant at the edge of a field suddenly encounters a patch of highly saline, salty soil, or a sudden, severe pocket of drought, it begins to experience profound stress. But it does not suffer alone. It immediately transmits a chemical alarm signal down through its roots and out into the shared fungal network of the soil. This silent warning travels swiftly through the dark earth, reaching the roots of neighbouring plants long before the salt or the drought ever touches them. Upon receiving this message, the neighbours instantly change their behaviour. They close the microscopic pores on their leaves, locking moisture inside, bracing for a hardship they have not yet physically experienced. They trust the warning of their neighbour implicitly. It is a masterclass in community resilience, a deeply intertwined society where the pain of one becomes the preparation of the whole. The body possesses its own quiet resilience, its own deeply intertwined systems of rest and repair. You can trust your body's profound intelligence as it slows your heart rate, deepens your breathing, and softly guides you down into the restorative depths of sleep. You're safe, protected, and held by the quiet certainty of the night. As those roots navigate the deep earth, sending their warnings and seeking their sustenance, they do not simply grow toward moisture with blind, unthinking hunger. They possess a sophisticated ability to assess and evaluate their environment, much like a meticulous explorer mapping a new territory. When a root tip senses the presence of water, a subtle gradient of moisture in the granular soil, it does not immediately commit all of its energy to growing in that direction. First, it tests the volume of the space. By releasing subtle chemical exudates and sensing how those chemicals bounce back or diffuse in the dark, the root can determine the physical size of the soil patch and the richness of the nutrients it holds. It is performing a complex cost-benefit analysis in the pitch black. If the patch of moisture is too small, or the soil too poor to support long-term growth, the root will abandon the pursuit, gracefully turning away to seek a more abundant future. It is a stunning display of calculated patience, a reminder that it is perfectly natural to test the waters, to assess our surroundings, and to save our energy for the places that will truly nourish us. This careful, calculated patience finds its most profound expression in the life cycle of a single dormant seed. Imagine a tiny, hard-shelled seed, no larger than a grain of sand buried in the cool, dark earth. It appears entirely lifeless, a speck of dust lost in the vastness of the soil. Yet, within its microscopic heart, a highly advanced, deeply quiet biological computer is running. A small cluster of specialized cells acts as a decision-making center, constantly processing a flood of environmental data. It measures the precise fluctuations in soil temperature, the exact moisture levels, and even the tiny fragments of light that filter down through the dirt. It weighs the risks of a late frost against the rewards of an early spring. It debates chemically whether to remain in the safe, quiet dark or to risk everything and push toward the surface. The seed may wait for days, years, or even decades, holding on to its potential, waiting for the one perfect moment. It is the wisdom of perfect timing, a deep, quiet knowing that there is a season for action and a beautiful, necessary season for profound, undisturbed rest. And as the seed rests safely in the dark earth, trusting the slow turning of the seasons, we too can surrender entirely to the gentle, enveloping dark, knowing that the time for growing will come again, but for now there is only the quiet and the deep restorative peace of the waiting. That quiet, resting seed, buried in the dark, is not isolated. It is intimately connected to the surrounding earth, constantly listening for the subtle signals of life. When the time is finally right and the seed begins to awaken, the very first thing it does is push a single, fragile root tip down into the unknown. We often assume this root is merely feeling its way blindly through the granular dirt, hoping to stumble upon a pocket of moisture. But the reality is far more wondrous. The plant is actively listening. Deep underground, a hidden river, a trickling spring, or even water rushing through a buried clay pipe creates a very specific low-frequency acoustic murmur. The root tip can hear this faint gurgling vibration echoing through the packed layers of soil. Even if the pipe is entirely sealed and the earth immediately surrounding the root is completely dry, the plant will navigate precisely toward the sound. It is drawn to the acoustic promise of water, sensing the delicate vibrations of flowing life through the dense earth. It reveals a subterranean world where listening is not a function of ears, but a full-body experience of resonance and vibration, guiding the green world toward exactly what it needs to survive. But how does that tiny, newly born root know which direction is down? In the absolute pitch-black void of the underground, where there is no sun to guide it, the plant relies on a stunningly elegant internal compass. Hidden just inside the protective cap of the growing root are specialized microscopic chambers. Inside these delicate rooms sit even smaller, incredibly dense grains of starch known as statoliths. As the root moves or shifts in the soil, these heavy microscopic stones are pulled by the gravity of the earth. They tumble slowly and softly, settling at the very bottom of the cellular chamber. When they touch the base, they send a chemical signal to the rest of the root, whispering that this way is down. It functions exactly like the delicate balancing mechanisms inside the human inner ear. The plant is literally feeling the majestic planetary pull of gravity, using the heavy stones to anchor itself, ensuring its foundation is perfectly aligned with the center of the world. Just as the roots surrender so completely to the steady, comforting pull of the Earth's gravity, your own body can surrender too. You can feel the gentle, anchoring weight of your limbs settling deeper into the mattress. There is no need to hold yourself up. You're entirely secure, softly grounded, and perfectly at peace in this exact space. As the roots plunge downward into the dark, the green shoots reach upward, but their journey is not always a simple, blind race toward the sun. In the dense, emerald shadows of a tropical rainforest, where light is a rare and precious commodity, a young seedling of the monstera vine makes a deeply counterintuitive decision. Upon sprouting from the damp leaf litter, it does not stretch toward the scattered, dappled patches of sunlight. Instead, it engages in a rare behavior called scototropism. It actively grows toward the deepest, darkest shadow it can perceive. It scans the dim horizon of the jungle floor, searching for a tall, vertical column of absolute blackness. It does this because it possesses the ancestral knowledge that this profound shadow is the trunk of a massive ancient canopy tree. The young vine slithers deliberately into the dark, seeking the solid, unwavering strength of the giant. Only after it has found this anchor, wrapping its delicate tendrils around the rough bark, does it begin its long, vertical climb toward the open sky. It is a beautiful reminder that sometimes we must move into the shadows to find our strongest support, trusting the dark to lead us upward. Once that vine reaches the upper canopy, bursting into bloom in the warm, humid air, it encounters a vast ecosystem of flying creatures. And here, the flowers engage in a highly selective acoustic dialogue with their visitors. We often picture a flower as a simple, open cup of nectar, freely giving its pollen to any passing breeze or insect. But certain blooms, like those of the wild tomato plant, hold their golden pollen locked away in tightly sealed vaults. They do not release their treasure easily. They wait for a very specific resonance. When a bumblebee lands on the bright yellow petals, she performs an act of specialized magic known as buzz pollination. She disengages her wings and rapidly vibrates her powerful flight muscles, producing the exact resonant frequency of a musical middle C. This specific acoustic vibration acts as an invisible sonic key. It shakes the precise structure of the flower, causing the sealed pores to burst open, releasing a sudden shimmering shower of pollen directly onto the bee. The flower demands a specific song, a vibration that proves the insect is the perfect partner, creating a musical harmony that sustains the entire meadow. This demand for perfection is not limited to sound. It is woven into the very mathematical geometry of the plants themselves. If you were to look straight down at the center of a sunflower or gaze at the tightly packed leaves of a desert succulent, you would witness a masterpiece of silent calculation. Plants construct themselves according to the Fibonacci sequence, a famous mathematical spiral found throughout spinning galaxies and ocean shells. As a stem grows, it produces each new leaf at an angle of exactly 137.5 degrees from the leaf that came before it. This is known as the golden angle. This is not a random twist of biology. It's a vital, precise equation. By growing in this perfect, spiraling mathematical pattern, the plant ensures that as it gets taller, no single leaf ever entirely eclipses the one below it. It creates a spiraling staircase of green, maximizing the amount of soft rain and golden sunlight that can touch every single surface. The plant is a quiet, living mathematician, calculating the perfect geometry of light, ensuring that every part of the whole is nourished and seen. The mind, too, can find a beautiful, effortless order in stillness. You do not need to calculate, arrange, or force your thoughts into place right now. You can simply let them unfold naturally, perfectly spaced, drifting through your awareness without any effort or tension. The quiet geometry of rest is already organizing itself within you. This brilliant ability to organize and adapt allows the green world to thrive in places that seem entirely uninhabitable, such as the shifting, chaotic border between the land and the sea. Here, standing waist-deep in the salty tide, the sprawling mangrove tree exists in an environment that would be instantly lethal to almost any other plant. Salt water draws moisture out of living cells, yet the mangrove leaves remain thick, green, and perfectly hydrated. They achieve this through a magnificent feat of biological engineering buried in their submerged, tangled roots. As the ocean tide rolls in, the roots create an intense, microscopic negative pressure, drawing the water upward. But at the exact boundary of the cellular membrane, they deploy an ultra-fine physical filter. Through sheer pressure and intricate cellular architecture, the roots block 99% of the salt from entering. They perform a continuous, elegant process of reverse osmosis, taking the harsh, unyielding salt water of the ocean and silently purifying it into sweet, fresh water to nourish their high canopy. They stand in the crashing waves, quietly transforming the difficult elements of their world into pure, life-sustaining nourishment. Far away from the damp coastlines, in the dry, sweeping savannas, other trees use their energy not just to filter their environment, but to build entirely new societies. The towering acacia tree standing isolated in the golden grass does not just tolerate the wildlife around it, it actively recruits a private army. It grows large, swollen thorns that are entirely hollow inside. These are not just weapons, They are perfectly designed, weatherproof homes, constructed specifically for a certain species of biting ant. But housing is not enough to keep an alliance strong. At the base of its leaves, the acacia also secretes a highly specialized nectar, a rich, sugary fluid that serves no nutritional purpose for the tree itself. It is a meal cooked entirely for the ants. In exchange for this custom-built city and endless supply of food, the thousands of ants act as fierce, tireless guardians. If a grazing animal approaches, or a competing vine tries to climb the trunk, the ants swarm out to defend their home, stinging and biting until the threat retreats. The tree builds a city, provisions it, and rests easy, relying on a brilliant, peaceful economy of care and mutual defense. This astounding ability to orchestrate survival, to calculate geometry, and to forge alliances suggests a level of processing that feels almost mindful. In fact, over a century ago, the naturalist Charles Darwin proposed what is now known as the root-brain hypothesis. Modern scientists have discovered that just behind the very tip of a growing root lies a small cluster of cells known as the transition zone. This microscopic area acts like a biological command center. In a fraction of a second, this tiny zone processes up to 15 different environmental signals simultaneously. It is reading the pull of gravity, the gradient of moisture, the presence of toxins, the density of the soil, the acoustic vibrations of water, and the chemical whispers of neighboring plants. It integrates all this complex data, instantly calculating the absolute best path forward. A single tree possesses millions of these root tips, acting together like a vast, decentralized swarm intelligence, quietly mapping and navigating the dark earth with a computational power that mirrors the neural networks of the animal kingdom. And as this hidden, decentralized intelligence manages the life of the forest perfectly in the background, your own brilliant nervous system is doing the exact same for you. The breath naturally deepens and slows. The heart maintains its steady, rhythmic pulse. The body begins to heal and restore itself without a single ounce of your conscious effort. You can simply step back, let go of the reins, and let the quiet, profound systems of life take over. This deep biological intelligence does not merely react to the present moment. It possesses the profound ability to remember the past and prepare for the future. Consider the small, unassuming flowering plant known as a Arabidopsis. If this plant experiences a period of mild drought, it suffers, its leaves drooping as the soil turns to dust. But when the rains finally return and it recovers, it does not forget the hardship. It physically alters its own epigenome, the chemical markers that tell its DNA how to fold and unfold. It writes the memory of the drought into its physical structure. If a second drought occurs months later, the plant reacts entirely differently. It recognizes the familiar feeling of the drying soil and instantly closes its pores, locking its water inside long before the stress becomes dangerous. It has learned resilience. Even more beautifully, it passes this epigenetic memory down to its seeds. The next generation is born already knowing how to survive a dry spell they have never personally experienced. The memory of overcoming hardship becomes a literal biological blueprint for the future, a quiet inheritance of strength passed gently down the family line. When memory and timing are passed down through the generations, it can lead to the longest, most mysterious biological clocks on the planet. Deep in the mist-shrouded valleys of Asia, there are vast, ancient forests of a specific bamboo. For over a century, these soaring green stalks grow, multiply, and sway in the wind, completely devoid of flowers. They live entirely in a quiet, vegetative state. But then, driven by an internal clock that spans human lifetimes, something miraculous happens. Exactly once every 130 years, the entire forest bursts into bloom simultaneously. But the true wonder is the scale of this memory. If a botanist takes a cutting of that bamboo and plants it in an isolated garden in England, and another cutting is planted in the dry heat of California, they remain perfectly tethered to that invisible planetary rhythm. Despite existing in entirely different climates, rooted in different soils and separated by thousands of miles of roaring ocean, every single descendant of that bamboo will produce its delicate flowers on the exact same day across the globe. They are bound to an ancient internal rhythm, a sweeping planetary heartbeat that reminds us that no matter how far apart we may seem, we are always connected to the deep, resonant timing of the natural world, resting together under the same turning sky. That ancient planetary rhythm connecting the isolated bamboo forests across the globe is perfectly mirrored by a deeply physical, literal connection that takes place silently beneath the soil. When you look at a dense grove of towering trees, your eyes naturally perceive them as solitary individuals standing alone in the earth. But if you were to brush away the layers of damp soil and ancient leaf litter, you would witness a profound act of physical unity. When the roots of trees from the same species encounter one another in the dark, they do not compete or push each other away. Instead, they engage in a beautiful process known as natural root grafting. The protective outer bark of each root softens and dissolves, allowing the delicate living cambium layers underneath to press together. Slowly, over months and years, their vascular systems melt into one another, completely fusing. They create a single shared circulatory system, pumping water and rich golden sap back and forth. If one tree is cast into deep shade and cannot harvest enough sunlight, its grafted neighbours will silently pump their own excess sugar directly into its veins, keeping it nourished. Astonishingly, even if a tree is felled by a storm, leaving nothing but a shattered stump, the surrounding forest will continue to feed it through these fused roots, keeping the stump alive and pulsing with green sap for decades. It is a world where the boundary between self and other completely dissolves, replaced by an unbreakable physical vow to survive as one. As that golden sap flows through the fused roots, a portion of it is destined for a journey even further into the unknown. We often imagine plants simply pulling nutrients out of the earth, as if the soil were just a passive pantry. But in reality, plants are the most sophisticated, meticulous farmers on the planet. As a root tip glides through the dark earth, it constantly weeps a rich, complex syrup of carbohydrates, amino acids, and organic acids, releasing up to 30% of its hard-earned solar energy directly into the dirt. This is not a leak. It is an invitation. This sugary exudate is a carefully baked chemical cake, designed to attract very specific, highly beneficial strains of bacteria and fungi from the surrounding darkness. The plant literally cultivates its own microscopic garden. If the soil lacks iron, the root will change the recipe of its syrup, secreting compounds that summon the exact bacteria capable of unlocking iron from the surrounding rocks. The plant feeds the microbes, and in return, the microbes feed the plant, forming an invisible, shimmering halo of biological collaboration around every single root hair. It is a quiet, tireless economy of mutual care, a reminder that the most profound acts of creation often happen entirely out of sight, in the deep, fertile dark. This ability to wait, to cultivate, and to respond to the environment requires a stunning level of precise internal timing. Consider the damp, humid bogs of the American Carolinas, home to the striking emerald jaws of the Venus flytrap. Because closing its trap requires an immense expenditure of cellular energy, the plant cannot afford to make a mistake. It cannot snap shut every time a heavy raindrop falls or a piece of dry moss blows against its leaves. To ensure absolute precision, the flytrap possesses the astonishing ability to count. Embedded inside its crimson center are tiny, highly sensitive trigger hairs. When an insect brushes against one of these hairs, the plant does not move. Instead, it starts a silent internal timer. It waits. It holds a short-term memory of that first touch for exactly 20 seconds. If the insect moves again and brushes a second hair within that precise window of time, the plant confirms that the touch is alive and the trap snaps shut in a fraction of a second. But the counting does not stop there. The plant waits for the struggling insect to touch the hairs a third, fourth, and 5th time before it commits to releasing its digestive enzymes. It is a botanical masterclass in patience and verification, a brilliant physical calculation ensuring that energy is never wasted on a false promise. As the flytrap waits patiently, knowing exactly when to act and when to remain perfectly still, you too can embrace the profound peace of simply waiting. There is no rush to the morning. There is no urgency in this moment. Your body knows exactly how to settle, letting the slow, heavy gravity of rest pull you deeper into stillness. This precision in the swamp is mirrored by a more delicate, invisible infiltration that occurs in the sunlit meadows. Winding through the tall grasses is the dodder vine, a plant that resembles a tangle of thin golden thread. Lacking leaves and roots of its own, it must connect to a host plant to survive. But a host plant is not entirely defenseless. It has its own immune system, ready to fight off the invading vine. To bypass these defenses, the golden dodder vine performs an act of biological hacking that seems almost like science fiction. As it spirals tightly around the stem of a tomato or a soybean plant, it does not just physically tap into the sap, it sends thousands of its own microscopic messenger, Na molecules, directly into the bloodstream of the host. These invisible messengers are encoded with specific instructions. They flow through the host's veins, effectively silencing the host's defense genes, quietly turning off the internal alarms. The dodder vine speaks the exact genetic language of its neighbour, rewriting the code from the inside to create a peaceful, unresisting union. It is a breathtaking display of communication at the very foundation of life, a silent poetry of molecules flowing between two entirely different beings. That invisible flow of communication also dictates how the entire forest breathes. If you were to look at the underside of a broad green leaf through a powerful lens, you would see thousands of microscopic lip-like pores called stomata. These tiny mouths must open wide to inhale the carbon dioxide the plant needs to build its body. But every time a pore opens to take a breath, the leaf loses precious, vital water to the evaporating sun. To balance this dangerous trade-off, the leaf relies on an emergent, decentralized intelligence. The thousands of pores do not open and close all at once, nor do they act entirely alone. They communicate in patches, sending rapid, fluctuating vapor signals across the surface of the leaf. They are constantly solving a massively complex optimization equation, calculating exactly how many pores can safely open in the dappled sunlight, and how many must close in the sudden heat. It is a shimmering, mathematical dance of breath and water, a distributed brain existing on the surface of a single leaf, ensuring that the plant inhales exactly what it needs, without ever risking its own survival. This exquisite balance of the individual within the whole is ancient, reaching back to the misty primeval forests of our planet's deep past. In the cool, damp shadows of a secluded glen, the delicate feathery fronds of a fern unfurl slowly from the earth. Ferns do not reproduce with seeds, but with microscopic, dust-like spores that drift on the damp breeze. When a single, isolated spore lands on the rich green moss and begins to grow, it faces a genetic danger. If it fertilizes itself, its offspring will be exact clones, lacking the diversity needed to survive a changing world. To prevent this, the first fern spore to awaken releases a powerful invisible vapor into the damp air, a plant pheromone known as antheridiagen. This scent drifts across the forest floor, gently blanketing any other spores that land nearby. The vapor carries a profound instruction. It commands all the neighboring newly arriving spores to develop exclusively as male. By releasing this single, chemical sigh into the mist, the pioneer fern guarantees that the forest will be filled with diverse partners, actively shaping the biology and the destiny of its entire neighborhood just by its quiet presence in the moss. Just as that invisible mist settles softly over the quiet glen, allowing everything to find its perfect natural order, you can let a wave of soft relaxation settle over you. The mind does not need to manage the details of the night. It can simply drift, trusting the natural restorative rhythms of the dark. This instinct to protect and prepare the environment sometimes extends far beyond the immediate family, reaching deep into the very chemistry of the earth itself. In landscapes that have been scarred by natural heavy metals, or even in soils poisoned by industrial waste, the earth can seem barren, unable to support the fragile green of life. But nature always finds a way to heal. Certain remarkable plants, like the delicate alpine pennycress, are known as hyperaccumulators. They do not merely tolerate the toxic soil, they actively seek out the heavy metals. Their deep roots pull up dangerous elements like zinc, nickel and cadmium, drawing the toxicity out of the earth and storing it safely within the protective vaults of their own leaves. They act as quiet botanical alchemists, absorbing the darkness and the poison of the world, purifying the ground beneath them so that other, more delicate plants might one day be able to return and thrive. They give their entire lives to the slow, patient work of healing the scarred earth, turning a toxic landscape back into a sanctuary of life. While those deep roots heal the darkness below, the leaves above are engaged in a constant, highly sensitive observation of the light, using it to recognize their closest relatives. We know that plants can sense the shadow of a competitor and will stretch upward to escape it. But a shadow is not just a lack of light, it is a shift in color. When sunlight passes through the green leaf of a canopy tree, the leaf absorbs all the vibrant red light, allowing only the deep far red wavelengths to pass through and strike the plants below. When a plant senses this specific far red light bouncing off a neighbouring plant, it immediately knows it is getting crowded. But miraculously, by combining this light perception with the chemical scents drifting through the air, the plant can tell if the neighbour casting that shadow is a stranger or its own sibling. If it is a stranger, the plant will race upward, fighting for dominance. But if the bouncing light and the familiar scent reveal a sibling, the plant softens its approach. It subtly shifts the angle of its leaves, tilting them away to share the precious column of sunlight, choosing the harmony of the family over the endless, exhausting race to the top. The endless race of the day is over. There is nothing left to achieve, nothing left to win. You're perfectly safe to soften your approach, to tilt away from the light, and to let the comforting shadows of the night embrace you entirely. This physical adaptation to the surrounding world is not just a reaction to light, it is deeply shaped by the invisible physical forces of the air. Imagine a lone, majestic pine tree standing on a high, exposed mountain ridge, battered by the endless howling gales of winter. You might expect the wind to simply break the tree, but the tree is constantly listening to the physical touch of the wind through a process called thigmomorphogenesis. Every time a strong gust bends its branches and stresses its trunk, the plant responds at a cellular level. It alters its own growth patterns, intentionally growing shorter, thicker, and denser. It lays down thick bands of highly flexible reaction wood, specifically designed to absorb the kinetic energy of the storm. The tree takes the invisible, chaotic force of the wind and carves that exact force into the solid memory of its own wood. When you run your hand across the thick, ridged bark of an ancient, windswept tree, you are touching the physical memory of 1,000 winter storms, transformed through patience and resilience into unbreakable strength. The deep strength of those ancient, weather-beaten trees is rarely kept for themselves alone. It flows outward, anchoring the entire forest. Within every ancient woodland there are massive, towering giants known as hub trees, or mother trees. These are the oldest, most deeply rooted individuals, acting as the beating central heart of the vast fungal network beneath the soil. Through their expansive root systems, these matriarchs are connected to hundreds of other trees. They constantly monitor the health of the entire grove. Amazingly, they can recognize the chemical signatures of their own specific seedlings sprouting in the dim understory, and they will deliberately pump extra water and carbon directly to their own young to ensure they survive the darkness. But their generosity does not end with their kin. When a mother tree reaches the very end of its long life and begins to fade, it does not hold tightly to its remaining life force. In its final months, it pulses its vast accumulated wisdom, its defense signals, its excess carbon, its remaining nutrients, down into the fungal web, distributing its life energy to the entire surrounding forest. It empties itself completely, ensuring that as it falls, the forest itself grows stronger, weaving its eternal legacy into the quiet, pulsing heartbeat of the woodland that will continue to dream beneath the stars. The legacy of the mother tree, that silent outflowing of life and wisdom into the forest floor, reminds us that nothing in the botanical world is truly ever lost. It is merely redistributed into a vast shared dream. This spirit of cooperation reaches its most exquisite expression in the high, mist-draped mountains where the air is thin and the soil is sparse. Here you will find the lichen, an organism so strange and beautiful it challenges our very definition of an individual. A lichen is not a single plant, but a profound marriage between a fungus and an alga. The fungus provides the architecture, a sturdy microscopic fortress that clings to the bare rock and captures moisture from the passing clouds. Tucked safely within these fungal walls, the alga performs the miracle of photosynthesis, weaving sunlight into food. They are so perfectly integrated that they function as one, breathing as one, growing in rhythmic circles across the stone. It is a biological pact of absolute mutualism, a reminder that when we combine our strengths and offer each other sanctuary, we can thrive in places where we could never survive alone. As the lichen slowly carves its home into the ancient stone, it does so with a patience that spans centuries, a rhythm that mirrors the slow, cooling breath of a sleeping planet. You can feel that same slow rhythm beginning to settle within your own chest. Your breath is becoming a soft, steady tide, moving in and out like the mist moving through the trees. The world is quiet. The shadows are soft. There is no need for anything but this gentle, effortless presence. This ancient patience is also held within the very cells of the ginkgo tree, a living ghost from a world that existed long before the first flower ever bloomed. When you look at the unique fan-shaped leaves of a ginkgo, you're looking at a design that has remained unchanged for over 200 million years. While other species rose and fell, while the continents shifted and the great dinosaurs faded into the earth, the ginkgo remained. It survived the unimaginable because it possesses a relentless internal vitality. It produces a suite of protective chemicals that make it almost entirely immune to pests, fungi, and even the toxic air of modern cities. It is a master of endurance, a silent witness to the deep history of our world. To rest beneath a ginkgo is to rest beneath a bridge of time, connecting us to a primeval peace that has never been broken. It reveals that true strength is not found in constant change, but in a core of steady, unwavering resilience that knows exactly how to remain itself through the ages. This steady resilience often hides a surprisingly complex social life, particularly among the trees we consider most familiar. Take the beech tree, standing tall and silver-barked in the cool, temperate woods. We often see these trees growing in tight cathedral-like groves, their branches interweaving to create a ceiling of green. In these communities, the beech trees practice a form of social security that is almost human in its complexity. If a single tree is attacked by insects or falls ill, it broadcasts a specific chemical distress signal into the air and through the soil. Upon receiving this message, the healthy neighbours do not simply protect themselves, they actively pump extra nutrients to the sick individual through their connected roots. They recognise that a gap in the canopy is a threat to the whole grove, letting in too much heat or wind. They keep the weakest among them alive for as long as possible, maintaining the integrity of their shared home. It is a society of mutual protection, where the health of the individual is inseparable from the health of the forest, a quiet testament to the power of a community that refuses to leave anyone behind. As the beech trees stand together in their silver groves, they create a sanctuary of stillness where the body can finally feel its own weight. You can let the muscles of your shoulders soften, imagining them as broad, heavy branches settling into the quiet of the evening. The tension is draining away, sinking into the soft earth, leaving you light and unburdened. Your mind is like a clear pool in the centre of the forest, reflecting nothing but the soft silver light of the moon. While the beech trees coordinate their health through the soil, other plants utilise the very air to engage in sophisticated strategic planning. In the dry, dusty plains of the African savanna, the umbrella thorn acacia must defend itself against the world's most persistent grazers, the giraffes. When a giraffe begins to nibble on the leaves of an acacia, the tree reacts within minutes, flooding its foliage with bitter, toxic tannins that make the leaves unpalatable. But the tree also looks out for its neighbours. It releases a puff of ethylene gas into the breeze. The neighbouring acacia trees, sensing this gas on the wind, do not wait to be bitten. They immediately begin producing their own tannins, fortifying their leaves in advance. Because of this, giraffes have learned a clever counter-strategy. They always graze into the wind, moving toward trees that haven't yet received the invisible warning. It is a silent, high-stakes chess match, played with molecules and breezes, an invisible dialogue of defence that has been unfolding across the plains for millennia. This tactical brilliance is often paired with an incredible sensitivity to the cycles of the day and night. Many plants possess sleep movements, known as nyctinosty, where they physically change their posture as the sun sets. Consider the prayer plant, its broad, patterned leaves laid flat during the day to catch the light. As the twilight deepens, the plant begins a slow, graceful transition, folding its leaves upward and together like hands joined in prayer. This is not just a passive reaction to the dark. It is a controlled hydraulic movement designed to protect the delicate surfaces of the leaves from the evening dew or to conserve warmth. By closing itself off, the plant prepares for a period of internal restoration. It is a physical embodiment of the act of turning inward, a reminder that the transition from the busyness of the day to the silence of the night is a sacred, necessary rhythm for all living things. As the prayer plant folds its leaves and settles for the night, you too are invited to fold away the concerns of the day. You can turn inward, finding a quiet, warm space within yourself where you are entirely safe. The world outside is moving into a soft, blurred distance. Here, in the centre of your own quiet being, there is only the gentle rise and fall of your breath, a rhythmic prayer of rest that carries you closer and closer to sleep. The intelligence of plants even extends to a form of mapping their own history and lineage. In the deep acidic bogs of the north, the sphagnum moss creates vast springy carpets of green and red. This moss is a master of environment building. It releases ions that make the water around it so acidic that nothing else can grow there, effectively creating a private kingdom. But beneath the living green surface of the bog lies a deep preserved record of the past. Because the acidic, oxygen-free environment prevents decay, the lower layers of the moss turn into peat, preserving seeds, pollen, and even ancient artifacts for thousands of years. The moss is a living library, holding the memories of the landscape within its cold, damp embrace. It shows us that life can create its own sanctuary, a place where time stands still and the past is held with such tenderness that it never truly disappears. It is a landscape of profound, ancient stillness, where the weight of the years is as light as a layer of moss. This sense of ancient, unmoving time is nowhere more apparent than in the high, arid mountains of the Great Basin, home to the bristlecone pine. These trees do not look like the lush giants of the valley. They are gnarled, twisted and weathered, their wood polished to a golden sheen by centuries of wind and ice. Some of these individuals have been standing in the same spot for over 5,000 years. They were already ancient when the pyramids were being built. They survived by growing with an incredible disciplined slowness, sometimes adding only 1/8 of an inch of girth in an entire century. They have mastered the art of doing less, of conserving every drop of energy and moisture. They prove that the secret to immortality is not in the rush of growth, but in the ability to endure, to stand still, and to find a home in the most difficult circumstances. To look at a bristlecone pine is to see the face of time itself, a slow, enduring wisdom that knows that the storms will pass and the sun will always return to the mountain. As you contemplate the 5,000 years of the bristlecone's life, your own sense of time can begin to stretch and soften. The minutes are no longer sharp or urgent. They are slow, wide, and deep. You're floating on a vast, quiet ocean of time where there is no shore in sight and no need to reach one. You're simply here, in the eternal present of the night, drifting with the steady, slow-moving currents of the stars. This endurance is not just a matter of physical toughness. It is guided by a sophisticated internal monitoring of the planet's own magnetic field. Emerging research suggests that plants may possess a sense of magnetoreception, allowing them to perceive the invisible magnetic lines that wrap around the Earth. Some roots have been observed to align their growth with the north-south axis of the magnetic field, even in total darkness. It is as if every root tip carries a tiny, microscopic compass, a hidden needle that keeps the plant oriented within the greater geometry of the planet. They are not just growing in the dirt, they are growing in a world of invisible forces tethered to the very core of the Earth. It is a comforting thought to realize that even when we are lost in the dark, we are always being guided by deep, silent forces that we cannot see, keeping us aligned with the heart of the world. This alignment with the planet is what allows life to perform the most fundamental miracle of all, the transformation of light into solid form. Inside every green leaf, within the tiny emerald-coloured chloroplasts, the plant is performing an act of alchemy. It captures a photon of light, a particle that has travelled 93 million miles from the sun, and uses its energy to split a molecule of water. It then takes carbon from the air and weaves these elements together to create sugar. This is the foundation of all life on Earth. Every piece of wood, every blade of grass, and every breath you take is a direct result of this silent, sun-drenched labour. The plants are literally weaving the sun into the earth, turning the ethereal into the tangible. It is a process of pure light, a reminder that we are all at our very core made of the sun's warmth and the earth's substance, held together by a quiet green magic that never sleeps. The sun's work is done for the day, and now it is your turn to rest. The energy you gathered is being quietly processed, your own internal alchemy turning the experiences of the day into the wisdom of the night. You're becoming part of the Earth's quiet exhalation, a slow, peaceful release into the dark. As the light fades and the photosynthesis ceases, the forest enters a state of profound chemical communication that we're only just beginning to understand. During the night, the trees release a different set of volatile compounds, aromatic molecules like terpenes and phytoncides. These are the scents that give the night forest its clean, sharp, and calming fragrance. When we breathe these in, they actually lower our cortisol levels and strengthen our immune systems. The trees are not just cleaning the air, they are medicating the atmosphere, creating a healing bath of scent for everything that lives within their reach. They are the guardians of our well-being, even while they sleep. As you drift closer to the edge of sleep, imagine yourself surrounded by this invisible aromatic embrace, a protective cloud of forest breath that settles your heart and clears your mind, carrying you safely into the deep green silence that lies just ahead. That invisible aromatic embrace drifting through the night forest is not merely a soothing perfume for those who wander beneath the canopy. It is an active physical currency exchanged between the plants themselves. When a plant, such as a wild tomato vine, senses that it is under threat from foraging insects, it releases a very specific cocktail of volatile organic compounds into the breeze. We have explored how neighbours listen to these scents to prepare their own defences, but the reality of this exchange is even more intimate and far more deeply connected. The neighbouring plants do not just smell the warning on the wind, they physically inhale the molecules. Through their microscopic pores, they absorb the very breath of their neighbour. Once inside, they do not just read the chemical message, they dismantle it. They strip down the borrowed molecules and reassemble the carbon and hydrogen atoms to build their own defensive toxins. They are literally weaving their own armour out of the exhaled breath of a friend nearby. It is a stunning display of deep material resourcefulness, proving that in the green world nothing is ever truly wasted, and the very air we share can become the foundation of our collective strength and survival. This incredible sensitivity to the surrounding environment extends from the chemistry of the air down to the subtle acoustic vibrations of a single munching jaw. Picture a small, quiet rosette of leaves resting close to the soil, the Arabidopsis plant. To our eyes, it sits perfectly still, a silent participant in the meadow. But scientists have discovered that this delicate plant possesses a highly refined sense of hearing, finely tuned to the exact frequency of danger. If you were to play a microscopic audio recording of a caterpillar chewing on a leaf, reproducing the rhythmic acoustic crunch, the Arabidopsis plant instantly responds. Even without a single insect present, the sheer vibration of the recorded sound causes the plant to flood its leaves with defensive mustard oils. Yet, if you play the sound of wind howling, or the heavy drumming of a rainstorm, or even the buzzing of a harmless pollinator, the plant remains completely calm and unbothered. It has learned to perfectly filter the cacophony of the natural world, identifying the one specific rhythm that requires a response, and allowing all other noise to simply wash over it in peace. You too can allow the noise of the world to simply wash over you. There is no need to respond to every thought or every passing sound in the night. Your body is growing heavier, sinking into the soft assurance of the mattress. Your breath settles into a deep, comforting rhythm, filtering out the busyness of the day, leaving only a quiet, undisturbed calm. As your mind finds that quiet calm, let it drift toward the lush, emerald tangle of a tropical rainforest, where a completely different kind of illusion is being quietly painted onto the leaves. The passion flower vine is a sprawling, vibrant plant that climbs toward the canopy, adorned with some of the most intricate and breathtaking blossoms on earth. But its true genius lies hidden in the shape of its broad green leaves. The passion flower is the favoured nursery for the heliconius butterfly, a beautiful but highly territorial insect that will only lay its delicate eggs on a leaf that is completely unoccupied. Knowing this, the passion flower vine performs a masterful stroke of visual deception. It grows tiny, yellow, perfectly rounded nubs of tissue along the edges and stems of its leaves. To a passing butterfly, these small golden spheres look exactly like the eggs of a rival. Believing the leaf is already claimed, the butterfly flutters past, searching for an empty cradle elsewhere. Without eyes, without a brain, the plant has sculpted a flawless visual replica of an animal's egg, actively manipulating the behaviour of the insect world to protect its own future, resting secure behind a masterpiece of botanical mimicry. This profound ability to protect the future reaches its absolute zenith in the parched, sun-baked expanses of the desert, where life is governed by the brutal absence of water. Here lies the Rose of Jericho, often called the resurrection plant. During the long, searing droughts that can last for years, this plant does not simply endure, it performs an incredible act of biological suspension. As the moisture drains from the soil, the plant curls inward, retracting its branches into a tight, brittle ball of dry brown tumbleweed. It loses up to 95% of its cellular water, entering a state of extreme dormancy known as anhydrobiosis. To any observer, it appears entirely lifeless, a forgotten relic of the harsh desert sun. It can blow across the dunes for decades, resting in the dust. But when the rare desert rains finally arrive, a miracle of biology unfolds. Within hours of touching the damp earth, the dry, crumpled ball begins to soften. Its cells, flooded with a specialized sugary matrix that protected their delicate internal structure from collapsing, drink in the moisture. The branches slowly uncurl, stretching outward like fingers opening after a long sleep. Within a single day, it turns a vibrant, pulsing green, photosynthesizing and living fully once more. It is a stunning reminder that what appears to be an ending is often just a deep, necessary resting phase, waiting patiently for the right conditions to bloom again. Just as the resurrection plant waits safely in the dry sand, knowing that the rain will eventually return, you can rest in the absolute certainty that your energy will be restored. There is no need to force your own blooming right now. You're in a safe, quiet period of necessary dormancy. Let the dark night hold you, allowing your body to repair and replenish in its own perfect time. When that time for awakening finally comes, some plants refuse to wait for the warmth of the sun, choosing instead to generate their own heat from within. Deep in the freezing, snow-covered wetlands of early spring, long before the ice has begun to thaw, the eastern skunk cabbage begins its remarkable ascent. It does not wait for the frozen soil to warm. Instead, it utilizes an astonishing process called thermogenesis. Deep inside its thick hooded flower, a rapid burst of cellular respiration takes place, burning stored starches at an incredible rate. The plant literally becomes a biological furnace. It generates so much internal heat that it can maintain a temperature up to 60 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than the freezing air around it. As it pushes upward through the frozen earth, it physically melts the snow, carving a perfect circular oasis of warmth in the icy landscape. This radiant heat acts as a beacon in the cold, drawing the very first sluggish spring insects into its warm, sheltering hood. It provides a heated sanctuary in a freezing world, a beautiful testament to the power of generating our own warmth when the environment around us feels cold and unyielding. This alignment with the deeper rhythms of nature extends far beyond the sun and the changing of the seasons. It reaches all the way to the silver light of the moon. In the dry, rocky landscapes of the eastern Mediterranean, there grows a climbing shrub known as Ephedra foeminea. Most plants that rely on insects for pollination coordinate their blossoms with the bright, warming rays of the morning sun. But this enigmatic shrub operates on a lunar schedule. It waits precisely for the cycle of the full moon. As the moon reaches its absolute brightest, bathing the rocky hills in a cool, silvery glow, the plant secretes tiny, spherical drops of sugary fluid from its delicate cones. These droplets act like perfectly engineered microscopic mirrors. They catch the moonlight, sparkling and glimmering in the dark like a constellation of liquid stars. This shimmering display is specifically designed to attract nocturnal moths and flies, guiding them safely through the shadows to the waiting nectar. The plant is literally communicating with the light of the moon, timing its own survival to the majestic, silent turning of the celestial bodies hanging in the vast night sky. You can let your mind float upward into that vast velvet sky, drifting among those quiet silver stars. Your body is anchored safely in the softness of your bed, but your awareness can expand, weightless and free, riding on the gentle, slow-moving currents of the night. There is absolutely nothing tying you down, nothing holding you back from absolute peace. If we were to follow that silvery moonlight as it reflects off the waves of the Mediterranean Sea and dive deep beneath the gentle, rolling surface, we would discover one of the most ancient and expansive forms of plant intelligence on Earth. Stretching across the submerged sandy ocean floor are the sprawling meadows of Neptune grass, or Posidonia oceanica. When you swim over these waving green ribbons, you're not looking at a collection of individual plants. You're witnessing a single, continuous cloning organism that has been slowly expanding its territory for over 100,000 years. Through a vast network of underground rhizomes buried in the seafloor sediment, this ancient being pushes out exact genetic copies of itself, inch by slow inch, century after century. It is a living entity that survived the last ice age, quietly holding the ocean floor together. These immense underwater meadows act as the lungs of the sea, drawing massive amounts of carbon out of the water and exhaling pure oxygen into the blue currents. It is a slow, rhythmic breathing that has sustained marine life for millennia, a profound meditation of endurance hidden entirely beneath the waves. We rise from the cool, submerged meadows and travel to the highest, cloud-draped peaks of the tropical Andes, where plants have learned to survive without ever touching the earth at all. Suspended high in the upper canopy, clinging to the damp bark of ancient trees, are the epiphytes, vibrant orchids, bromeliads, and trailing ferns that live their entire lives in the air. Because they have no roots connecting them to the soil, they must harvest their moisture directly from the sky. To accomplish this, their leaves are covered in highly specialized microscopic scales called trichomes. When the thick rolling fog moves through the mountains, these trichomes act like tiny sophisticated sponges. They open wide to actively snatch microscopic droplets of water vapor straight out of the mist, funneling the moisture directly into the heart of the plant. During dry spells, the trichomes snap shut, sealing the water inside and reflecting the harsh sunlight away to prevent evaporation. These plants have mastered the art of pulling life out of thin air, finding perfect nourishment in the passing, ephemeral clouds that drift silently through the high mountain passes. This intimate relationship with water is not just a mechanism for individual survival, it is a global rhythm that physically shapes the climate of our planet. On a hot, still afternoon, when the sun beats down on a vast, unbroken expanse of the Amazon rainforest, the trees engage in a massive, collective exhalation known as transpiration. Just as human skin releases moisture to cool the body, the billions of leaves in the canopy open their microscopic pores and release a staggering volume of water vapor into the sky. A single, mature oak tree can transpire over 100 gallons of water in a single day. Across an entire forest, this invisible rising river of vapor carries the heavy heat away from the ground, dramatically cooling the air beneath the canopy. But this vapor does not simply disappear. It gathers, condenses, and forms massive, low-hanging clouds that eventually break into torrential rains, watering the forest once again. The trees are actively creating their own weather, pumping literal rivers of water into the sky to ensure the landscape remains lush, cool, and perfectly suited for the endless continuation of life. Feel the cool, soothing rhythm of your own breath moving in and out, just like the forest breathing out its moisture to cool the world. With every slow exhale, you are releasing the heat and the tension of the day. With every gentle inhale, you're drawing in the calm, quiet peace of the night. This profound ability to shape the environment and adapt to its most extreme forces brings us to the towering, rust-coloured trunks of the giant sequoias, standing like ancient pillars in the misty mountains of California. These trees, the most massive living things on Earth, have bark that is sometimes 2 feet thick, infused with tannins that make them almost entirely impervious to fire. But their relationship with fire is not merely one of defense, it is one of absolute reliance. High above the forest floor, the sequoia produces thousands of small, tightly sealed green cones. These cones are held shut by an incredibly strong natural resin. They can hang on the branches for 20 years, patiently waiting in the wind and the rain. They are waiting for the intense, scorching heat of a forest fire. Only when a fire sweeps through the underbrush, clearing away the dead wood and opening the canopy to the sky, does the rising heat finally melt the resin. The cones slowly open, releasing their tiny flake-like seeds onto the newly cleared mineral-rich ash below. The sequoia knows that the destruction of the fire is actually the ultimate act of renewal. It relies on the flames to clear the path for the next generation, proving that even the most frightening forces in the world can carry the seeds of profound, beautiful new beginnings, just waiting to softly fall. When those tiny, flake-like sequoia seeds finally drift down to rest on the cooling grey ash of a newly cleared forest floor, they are greeted by a deeply ancient chemical messenger. The fire that swept through the woods did not just clear the physical brush, it fundamentally altered the chemistry of the earth. As wood and plant matter burn, they release a specific class of organic molecules known as charikins. These microscopic compounds settle into the charred soil, acting as a profound botanical alarm clock. seeds of pyrophytic or fire-loving plants have evolved highly specialized receptors designed entirely to detect the scent of these characins. For years, or even decades, a seed can lie dormant, ignoring the rain and the sun, waiting specifically for the chemical signature of smoke. When it finally tastes the karakin in the ash, the seed understands that the canopy above has been opened, the ground is clear of competitors, and the soil is rich with freshly deposited minerals. It is the perfect, safest moment to begin a new life. The destruction of the fire literally leaves behind the chemical blueprint for resurrection, a beautiful promise written in the ashes that life will absolutely return. This incredible ability to wait for the perfect conditions is not limited to the aftermath of a fire. It is a vital strategy in the quiet, sun-baked expanse of the southern African deserts. Here, resting on the arid gravel plains, you will find a plant that has mastered the art of total camouflage. The lithops, commonly known as the living stone, has abandoned the traditional architecture of stems and sprawling branches. To protect itself from thirsty, foraging herbivores, it grows almost entirely underground, exposing only the very tops of its two thick fused leaves to the air. These exposed tops perfectly mimic the colour, texture and shape of the surrounding quartz and limestone pebbles. But burying your body presents a profound problem. How do you capture the sunlight needed to survive? The lithops solves this with a breathtaking stroke of biological engineering. The flat tops of its leaves are actually translucent windows, entirely free of green chlorophyll. They act like fibre optic cables, capturing the harsh desert sunlight and channeling it deep underground into the cool, buried heart of the plant, where the delicate green photosynthetic tissues are safely hidden. The plant lives a secret, illuminated life beneath the earth, hiding in plain sight as a quiet, dreaming stone. Just as the living stone rests perfectly concealed and completely secure in its environment, you too can allow yourself to blend seamlessly into the quiet of this space. You do not need to stand out or hold any tension. You can let the edges of your awareness soften, sinking deeply into the comforting, protective shadows of the room, completely safe and entirely at rest. As the shadows lengthen across the desert, we journey far away to the humid, echoing emerald jungles of Borneo, where the shadows conceal an entirely different kind of quiet partnership. High in the twisting vines, the Nepenthes hemsliana pitcher plant hangs like a delicate green chalice. While most pitcher plants are designed to trap unwary insects, this specific species has evolved a magnificent acoustic architecture to welcome a very specific guest. The back wall of the pitcher has grown into a highly reflective parabolic dish. It is perfectly shaped to catch and bounce back the ultrasonic echolocation calls of the Hardwick's woolly bat. As the tiny bat flies through the dense, confusing clutter of the nighttime jungle, the plant acts as a brilliantly clear acoustic beacon, calling out in the dark. The bat follows the echo to the pitcher and crawls inside, finding a perfectly sized, cool and parasite-free sleeping chamber where it can rest safely during the day. In return for this flawless sanctuary, the bat's nutrient-rich droppings provide the plant with all the vital nitrogen it needs to survive in the nutrient-poor jungle canopy. It is a stunning, harmonious exchange, an acoustic lighthouse offering safe harbour to a weary traveller in the endless green sea. This spirit of finding sanctuary often drives life to explore the most hidden, unexpected corners of the world. In the dry, sandy shrublands of Western Australia, there exists a flower of almost mythical strangeness, the Rhizanthella gardneri, or the Western underground orchid. Unlike almost every other flower on the planet, this delicate ruby-red blossom never sees the light of the sun. It lives its entire life cycle entirely buried beneath the surface of the earth. Lacking the ability to photosynthesize, it survives by tapping into a vast mycorrhizal fungal network, quietly borrowing the sugars that the fungus gathers from nearby broombrush shrubs. But a flower must be pollinated, and the wind cannot reach the dark underground. To solve this, the buried orchid releases a potent, sweet fragrance that permeates through the layers of damp soil and leaf litter. This subterranean perfume specifically attracts tiny, wandering termites and gnats. They tunnel through the dirt, drawn to the sweet scent, and arrive at the hidden cathedral of the orchid, brushing past its pollen before tunneling away to find another. The orchid blooms, thrives, and reproduces in absolute total darkness, a reminder that profound beauty and complex life can flourish perfectly well, even when it is entirely hidden from the eyes of the world. The quiet, unlit world of the underground orchid challenges our assumption that all plants are hopelessly tethered to the sun. This realization actually dawned on human science over 3 centuries ago, inside a quiet, darkened room in France. In the year 1729, an astronomer named Jean-Jacques d'Ortu de Méran became fascinated by the Mimosa pudica, a plant whose leaves open wide in the morning and fold tightly shut at night. Seeking to understand this behaviour, he placed the plant inside a thick wooden box, sealing it away in absolute unbroken pitch blackness. He expected the plant, deprived of the sunrise, to remain in a permanent folded sleep. But when he briefly peered into the dark box during the day, he was astonished. The leaves were wide open. When he checked again at midnight, they were tightly closed. Even in total isolation from the shifting light of the world, the plant continued its slow, daily breathing. It possessed a powerful internal circadian clock. It held the memory of the turning planet within its very cells, keeping perfect time in the dark. It was the very first proof that the rhythms of life are not just reactions to the outside world, but are deeply, intrinsically woven into the fabric of the organism itself. Your own body holds that same ancient intrinsic rhythm. Deep within you, a quiet clock is unwinding the day, naturally releasing the hormones of sleep, gently lowering your temperature and guiding you downward. You do not need to consciously manage this process. You can simply trust the brilliant automatic wisdom of your physical self to carry you safely into rest. This internal wisdom allows plants to anticipate the most extreme shifts in their environment, preparing for hardships long before they arrive. Consider the delicate, nodding white bell of the snowdrop flower. It is one of the very first signs of life in the year, often pushing its way up through a thick, heavy blanket of frozen snow. To survive the brutal sub-zero temperatures that would shatter the cells of almost any other leaf, the snowdrop relies on a masterful manipulation of its internal fluids. As the air turns freezing, the plant actively pumps water out of its delicate cells and into the empty intercellular spaces of its stems and leaves. Simultaneously, it produces specialized antifreeze proteins. By moving the water outside the cell walls, the plant allows the water to freeze harmlessly into ice crystals in the empty spaces, while the concentrated, protein-rich sap inside the cells remains completely liquid. The plant essentially orchestrates its own controlled freezing, ensuring that its vital living architecture remains unpunctured and intact. It stands delicate and unbroken in the bitter cold, an elegant masterpiece of chemical engineering wrapped in a fragile white petal. While the snowdrop chemically engineers its own survival against the cold, other plants use their chemistry to orchestrate massive underground rescue operations. During the long, warm days of summer, the towering stalks of a cornfield may appear entirely peaceful. But beneath the soil, their sprawling root systems are sometimes attacked by the larvae of the western corn rootworm. The plant cannot flee, but it is far from helpless. The moment the roots are bitten, the corn plant analyzes the specific digestive compounds in the insect's saliva. In response, it synthesizes and releases a highly volatile chemical called beta-caryophyllin directly into the damp earth. This chemical acts as a microscopic subterranean distress beacon. It diffuses rapidly through the soil, reaching out into the dark. It is specifically formulated to attract a particular species of entomopathogenic nematode, a microscopic roundworm that aggressively hunts the rootworm larvae. The nematodes sense the chemical cry for help and swim through the moisture of the soil, swarming the attackers and saving the plant. The cornfield is not a collection of passive victims. It is a highly connected defensive network, capable of summoning a hidden army from the depths of the earth the moment danger arrives. This brilliant manipulation of the surrounding ecosystem extends from the roots in the soil all the way up to the sweet, fragrant nectar of the highest blossoms. We often view nectar simply as a sugary reward, a fair payment given to a bee in exchange for carrying pollen. But for many plants, such as citrus trees and coffee shrubs, the nectar is a highly complex psychoactive brew. Along with sugar, these plants intentionally lace their nectar with trace amounts of caffeine. This dosage is not enough to harm the pollinating bee, but it has a profound effect on the insect's tiny neurological system. The caffeine acts as a powerful memory enhancer. When a honeybee drinks the caffeinated nectar, the chemical artificially stimulates the reward centers of her brain, making the scent and the location of that specific flower utterly unforgettable. She becomes deeply devoted, ignoring other, potentially richer flowers in the meadow, and returning obsessively to the plant that provided the gentle stimulant. The flower is not merely offering a meal, it is quietly slipping a memory-enhancing potion into the cup, ensuring absolute loyalty and guaranteeing its own future through the power of a chemically altered memory. As the bee returns to the quiet comfort of the familiar blossom, your mind too can return to the simple, comforting rhythm of your breath. Any wandering thoughts can be gently released. Let your awareness settle back into the heavy, soft warmth of this moment, returning effortlessly to a state of deep, undisturbed peace. This ability to secure the future sometimes requires abandoning all conventional expectations of what a plant should look like or how it should behave. On the harsh, fog-swept coast of the Namib Desert, one of the driest and most unforgiving landscapes on Earth, lives a botanical anomaly called the Welwitschia mirabilis. When you first encounter it, it looks like a chaotic, sprawling pile of shredded green ribbons lying in the red sand. Yet, this entire plant consists of only 2 true leaves. After sprouting from a tiny seed, the Welwitschia produces exactly 2 leaves that grow continuously from a thick woody base for its entire existence. As the centuries pass, the harsh desert winds whip and tear the long leaves into hundreds of frayed strips. But they never stop growing. A single Welwitschia can live for over 2,000 years, surviving solely on the microscopic drops of moisture it absorbs from the rolling morning fog. It never grows taller, it never produces a third leaf. It simply anchors its deep taproot into the sand and embraces an existence of absolute profound minimalism. It is a masterclass in endurance, proving that a long, successful life does not require endless complexity or constant addition. Sometimes the greatest strength lies in holding onto a single, simple form and letting the winds of time simply wash over you. This immense, sweeping scale of time brings us to the ultimate testament of botanical patience, resting in the sun-bleached ruins of the ancient fortress of Masada, high above the Dead Sea. In the 1960s, archaeologists excavating the site uncovered a small clay jar that had been buried beneath the rubble for over 2,000 years. Inside the jar were several dry, hardened seeds of the Judean date palm, a magnificent tree that had been entirely extinct for centuries. For decades, the seeds sat quietly in a museum drawer, presumed to be nothing more than dead historical artifacts. But in the year 2005, a botanical researcher decided to attempt the impossible. She carefully bathed one of the ancient seeds in warm water and specialized hormones, planting it in a pot of fresh soil. Miraculously, the seed had not died. Its tiny internal cellular machinery had simply been paused, locked in a state of suspended animation since the days of the Roman Empire. Weeks later, a single, vibrant green shoot pushed its way up through the dirt. They named the young tree Methuselah. It is the oldest seed ever successfully germinated by human hands. To look at its sweeping green fronds today is to realize that the life force within the natural world is almost unimaginably resilient. It can sleep through the rise and fall of entire civilizations, resting quietly in the dark, holding tightly to the promise of the sun, perfectly ready to awaken and begin again the very moment the water returns. That tiny suspended date palm seed, holding on to life in the dry dark for 2,000 years, reveals the immense quiet power of simply waiting. But not all plants conquer time through suspended animation. Some conquer time through endless slow expansion. In the vast, sun-scorched expanse of the Mojave Desert, there lives an organism known as the king clone creosote bush. When the seed of this plant first took root in the gravelly sand, the last ice age was just coming to an end. It has been alive for nearly 12,000 years, but it does not look like an ancient towering monolith. As the central trunk aged and died centuries ago, the plant did not perish. It simply continued to send up new clonal shoots along its outer edge. Over millennia, it has expanded outward in a perfect continuous circle, slowly migrating through the desert dust. Today, the center is entirely empty, just an open ring of bare sand, encircled by the living green descendants of that single original sprout. The bush is a living ripple in the fabric of time, slowly moving outward, proving that true endurance sometimes means letting the center go entirely and allowing yourself to grow into a wider, more expansive circle of existence. From the dry, ancient rings of the desert sand, we transition to the still, muddy waters of tranquil ponds, where a very different kind of perfection is maintained. Here, the sacred lotus emerges from the murky depths, pushing its broad green leaves into the humid air. Despite growing in the thickest, most clinging mud, the leaves of the lotus remain flawlessly, brilliantly clean. This is not magic, but a masterpiece of microscopic structural intelligence known as the lotus effect. If you were to look incredibly closely at the surface of the leaf, you would see that it is completely covered in millions of microscopic waxy pillars. Because of this intricate architecture, water cannot physically wet the surface. Instead, a raindrop balances on the very tips of these invisible pillars, forming a perfect trembling sphere of liquid glass. As the leaf gently sways in the breeze, the water droplet rolls quickly across the surface, acting like a tiny liquid sponge. It effortlessly collects every single speck of dust, dirt, and mud, washing the leaf perfectly clean before dropping silently back into the pond. It is a stunning display of passive purification, a quiet reminder that we can rise from the most difficult, chaotic environments without allowing any of the mud to cling to us. While the lotus gracefully repels the heavy mud, other plants must actively fight their way through soils that are entirely unyielding. In the remote, windswept scrublands of southwestern Australia, the earth is incredibly old and has been stripped of almost all its vital phosphorus over millions of years of rainfall. For most plants, this soil is a barren wasteland, but the protea and macadamia plants refuse to surrender to the stone. When their deep roots detect that nutrients are scarce, they perform a sudden, remarkable physical transformation. They sprout specialized clusters of thousands of tiny, densely packed rootlets, resembling the thick bristles of a small brush. These cluster roots do not just passively absorb water, they act as brilliant chemical miners. They exude highly concentrated organic acids directly into the surrounding earth. This acid silently and patiently dissolves the ancient stubborn ironstone rock, slowly breaking down the mineral bonds to liberate the deeply trapped phosphorus within. They literally consume solid stone through quiet chemical persistence. They unlock nourishment where nothing else can survive, carving their own sustenance out of the harsh, unyielding rock of the deep earth. This slow, deliberate movement through the underground is mirrored by an even more astonishing journey that takes place above the soil in the emerald shadows of the Central American rainforest. Deep in the humid understory, where sunlight is a rare and precious treasure, stands the Socratea exoryza, beautifully known as the walking palm. It does not possess a single thick trunk buried deep in the earth. Instead, its main stem is held several feet above the ground, supported by a wide open teepee of sturdy woody stilt roots. when a massive canopy tree falls in the distance, tearing a hole in the dense green ceiling. A brilliant shaft of sunlight pierces the gloom. The walking palm can sense this distant light. Slowly, over the course of many months, it begins to grow new stilt roots reaching outward in the direction of the sunbeam, anchoring firmly into the damp mud. As these new roots take hold, the older roots at the rear of the plant are allowed to gracefully detach and rot away into the damp earth. Through this incredibly slow, deliberate shedding and reaching, the entire tree physically shifts its location. It steps softly across the jungle floor, moving inch by agonizingly slow inch over the years, walking completely out of the dark shadows and into the vibrant warmth of the light. Your own journey toward rest does not need to be hurried. You can take the slowest, softest steps away from the noise of the day. Allow your body to grow heavier, letting the mattress support the full, comfortable weight of your limbs. Let the breath become a slow, untroubled wave. There is no need to rush toward the morning. You can simply rest safely in the quiet, peaceful center of the night. As you find that quiet center, consider the profound patience of a plant that waits an entire year for a single, fleeting moment of expression. In the harsh, blinding heat of the Sonoran Desert, the night-blooming Cereus is a master of total disguise. For 364 days of the year, it resembles nothing more than a cluster of dead, grey sticks tucked beneath the spiny arms of a larger cactus. It hides its life away, conserving every drop of water, entirely unnoticed by the world. But on one specific, deeply humid night in midsummer, triggered by an invisible alignment of the lunar cycle and the heavy atmosphere, the entire desert population awakens. As the sun sets and the air cools, massive, brilliant white flowers begin to tremble and open in the dark. They reveal an intricate, star-like beauty, with dozens of delicate, trembling stamens reaching out into the night. They release an overwhelming, intoxicating perfume of vanilla and spice that floods the cool desert air, drifting for miles to call out to the sphinx moths flying through the shadows. By the time the first rays of dawn break the horizon, the flowers wilt and close forever. It is a whole year of quiet, disciplined waiting, culminating in a single glorious night of total, uninhibited beauty. The sweet, lingering scent of vanilla in the desert air leads us to the true vanilla orchid, native to the deep, tangled forests of Central America, where the window of opportunity is even more heartbreakingly brief. The vanilla vine climbs high into the canopy, weaving its way through the damp bark and the trailing moss. When it finally produces its pale greenish-yellow blossom, the flower opens for exactly one morning. It unfurls its delicate petals as the mist burns off, offering its nectar for just a few short hours. The orchid is waiting for a very specific partner, the tiny, iridescent Melipona bee, the only creature perfectly shaped to lift the floral hood and unlock its hidden pollen. If this specific bee does not arrive before the midday sun climbs high into the sky, the flower simply closes its petals and falls silently to the forest floor, its chance entirely gone. It is an exquisite, delicate precision. The plant pours its energy into an offering made only for a brief, perfect moment in time, trusting the complex, interlocking timing of the jungle to bring exactly what it needs before the morning fades. From the ephemeral, fleeting blooms of the humid jungle, we rise to the enduring, icy harshness of the highest peaks, where timing gives way to an armor built entirely of light. High atop the dormant, sweeping volcanoes of Hawaii, far above the clouds where the air is freezing and the ultraviolet radiation from the sun is blinding, lives the Haleakala silversword. It exists in an environment that feels more like the barren, rocky surface of the moon than a lush, tropical island. The biting alpine winds sweep across the jagged, rust-coloured cinders, carrying no warmth. To survive the intense, blistering solar radiation that would scorch ordinary leaves, The silver sword grows as a perfect dense rosette of dagger-like foliage, but its true brilliance lies in its texture. The entire plant is covered in thousands of tiny metallic silver hairs. These hairs act as a flawless botanical mirror. They perfectly reflect the harsh rays of the sun, shimmering like polished steel in the red volcanic dust. And when the freezing fogs roll across the crater, these same silver hairs catch the microscopic water droplets, condensing the mist and channeling the vital moisture down to the deep roots. The plant literally builds its own silver shield against the sky, turning the harshest elements of its world into the very tools of its survival. You too possess a quiet internal shield, softly glowing and perfectly protective. As you drift deeper into the comforting gravity of the bed, imagine a soft silver light surrounding your awareness. It gently deflects any remaining worries or lingering thoughts from the day. Everything outside of this peaceful space simply reflects away, leaving you perfectly insulated, deeply calm, and absolutely safe in the quiet. While the silver sword actively grows its brilliant armour, other parts of the forest display a profound intelligence long after their biological life has ended. If you walk through a quiet pine forest and find a fallen cone resting on the damp needles, you might assume its story is entirely over. But a pine cone possesses a remarkable form of physical structural memory known as hygroscopy. Even though the cells within the wood are no longer living, the cone is constantly reading the atmosphere. The thick scales of the pine cone are constructed of two different types of dead tissue that absorb moisture at entirely different rates. On a wet, rainy day, the damp air causes the outer layer to swell. The scales warp and curl tightly shut, locking the delicate seeds away to protect them from rot and fungus. But when the weather clears and a dry, warm breeze sweeps through the woods, the tissue shrinks. The scales slowly bend backward, opening wide to let the wind catch the seeds and carry them away. It is movement without metabolism, a perfect mechanical intelligence written directly into the geometry of the wood, protecting the future long after the life of the tree has moved on. This structural brilliance written into the very architecture of the plant reaches a majestic scale in the quiet, sweeping backwaters of the Amazon River, where the slow-moving currents resemble dark, polished glass. Floating peacefully on the surface is the giant water lily, Victoria amazonica. Its perfectly circular emerald leaves can grow up to 10 feet across, their edges turned up like a massive floating tart pan. To look at it from above, it appears delicate and serene, resting gently on the water. But beneath the dark surface lies a masterpiece of hidden architectural strength. The underside of the massive leaf is reinforced by an intricate radial web of thick, air-filled veins that branch out in perfect geometric patterns, armed with sharp spines to deter hungry fish. These thick veins act exactly like the steel girders of a suspension bridge, distributing weight with flawless mathematical precision. This structure is so brilliantly engineered that a single, fragile-looking leaf can support the weight of a small human without sinking beneath the surface. The plant hides its immense strength completely out of sight, a quiet lesson that true resilience is often held beneath the surface, built upon elegant hidden structures we cannot easily see. As the sun finally dips below the horizon and the heavy waters of the river turn a deep reflective indigo, the lightness of the evening air coaxes the moonflower to begin its beautiful performance. Unlike the vast majority of plants, which move too slowly for the human eye to perceive, the moonflower moves with a captivating real-time grace. If you sit quietly beside its twisting vine in the twilight, you do not have to imagine its movement. You can physically watch the large white spiraling petals unfurl like a delicate silk umbrella opening in slow motion. Over the course of just a few magical minutes, as the sky darkens from blue to indigo, the bud swells and softly pops. You can see the slight rhythmic shudder of the broad heart-shaped leaves. You can hear the faintest papery rustle of the unfolding blossom as it catches the silver starlight. The flower physically reaches out, actively uncurling to embrace the arrival of the dark. it releases a sweet, heavy fragrance into the cooling air, a quiet celebration that the heat of the day has finally passed. It honors the night, inviting you to do the exact same, to unfold your own quiet spaces, to let go of the bright, demanding light of the day, and to simply rest in the cool, fragrant peace of the unfolding dark. As that cool, fragrant peace settles over the landscape, the unfolding dark becomes a canvas for an entirely new kind of invisible architecture. We often think of fragrance as a simple, passive cloud drifting aimlessly on the breeze, rapidly dissipating into the night. But for the night-blooming jasmine, scent is a highly calculated structural pathway. This delicate plant does not waste its precious, energy-rich perfume during the chaotic heat and shifting thermals of the day. It waits, actively sensing the atmosphere around it. It feels the exact slow gradient of the temperature dropping as the sun disappears below the horizon. When the air reaches a perfect, cool threshold, the jasmine softly opens its small, white, star-like flowers. It does not just release its scent randomly. It orchestrates a continuous, precise release of sweet, heavy molecules, actively sculpting an invisible, three-dimensional cone of fragrance in the still night air. This chemical runway stretches far out into the darkness, maintaining its shape in the calm evening breeze. When a nocturnal moth takes flight, it uses its deeply feathered antennae to read the edges of this invisible cone, following the increasingly dense gradient of perfume directly to the center. The plant is literally carving a flawless, winding path through the empty air, using nothing but scent to guide the wandering travelers of the night safely home. As those winged travelers navigate the invisible paths of the air, the physical vines they gently brush past are engaged in their own quiet navigation by touch. In the tangled, whispering shadows of the forest edge, the passion flower vine relies on a profound, mechanical sensitivity known as thigmotropism. As the vine seeks to climb upward toward the canopy, it extends a long, slender tendril that sweeps in slow, wide, mesmerizing circles through the empty space, searching patiently for an anchor. When this delicate green thread finally grazes a solid branch, it reacts with astonishing speed, instantly curling around the rough wood to secure a firm grip. But the true genius of the vine is revealed in what happens next. The straight portion of the tendril, suspended between the plant and the branch, begins to twist. It twists from the middle outward in opposing directions, forming a perfect, tightly wound helical spring. It creates a literal, biological shock absorber out of its own tissue. When the heavy, chaotic winds of a storm rip through the trees, the passion vine does not snap, and its grip does not break. It simply bounces, stretches, and expands, absorbing the violent kinetic energy of the storm with elegant, yielding flexibility. It builds its own resilience, proving that the safest way to weather a storm is not to remain rigid, but to remain entirely, softly flexible. You are anchored just like that vine. You're tethered safely to the softness of this bed, able to weather any passing breeze of thought or memory. You can stretch, you can relax, and you can simply bounce softly with the slow rhythm of the night, entirely secure in this quiet space. The same passing wind that tests the flexibility of the vine often carries the heavy, rhythmic drumming of the rain. In the dense, steaming jungles of Southeast Asia, the torrential downpours are a daily chaotic force that batters the understory. Most plants simply brace their leaves and wait for the deluge to pass. But a slender, unassuming carnivorous plant known as the Nepenthes gracilis does not hide from the weather. It actively harnesses it. This pitcher plant hangs quietly in the shadows, its slick green trap topped with a rigid, highly specialized lid. The underside of this canopy-like lid is coated with a perfectly formulated microscopic wax that is incredibly slippery, yet just textured enough for a foraging ant to grip when it is dry. When the tropical storm breaks, insects rush to take shelter underneath the plant's wide lid. They believe they have found a safe haven from the downpour, but the plant is waiting for the rain. When a heavy, fast-moving raindrop strikes the very top of the lid, the leaf acts as a perfectly tensioned springboard. The kinetic energy of the raindrop is transferred instantly through the plant tissue, violently flicking the lid downward for a fraction of a second. The hiding insect is instantly dislodged, tumbling helplessly into the digestive pool below. The plant does not need to move a single muscle of its own. It borrows the sheer, falling energy of the sky, turning the heavy rain into a silent, active partner in its own survival. While the slender pitcher plant uses the forceful impact of the rain to hunt, the massive broad leaves of the highest canopy must quickly shed that same water to survive the crushing weight of the storm. If a broad, tropical leaf were to allow the heavy rainwater to pool permanently on its surface, the sheer accumulated mass would quickly snap the branch, and the lingering, suffocating dampness would invite thick layers of moss and fungus. To prevent this, the leaves of the deep rainforest have evolved an elegant structural masterpiece known as the drip tip. The ends of these canopy leaves are drawn out into long, slender, sharply tapering points, sculpted perfectly by the mathematical laws of fluid dynamics. As the heavy rain falls, the subtle, waxy grooves of the leaf surface force the water to channel rapidly down toward this single, elongated point. The water gathers at the very tip, forming a heavy, trembling droplet that quickly breaks free, falling silently back to the forest floor. The entire leaf acts as a flawless living aqueduct, immediately shedding the immense weight of the storm, clearing its surface so it can continue to breathe freely in the humid, misty air. As those countless droplets fall from the high canopy, they eventually pool on the forest floor, soaking deep into the dark, tangled earth. We have seen how the roots of trees instinctively seek out moisture, mapping the underground aquifers with profound intelligence. But a radical shift in awareness occurs when there is simply too much water. When the soil becomes entirely flooded, the microscopic air pockets between the grains of dirt collapse, and the earth is starved of oxygen. Plants, just like any living creature, must breathe to survive. In these suffocating moments, the root system engages a remarkable survival mechanism called aerotropism. The roots entirely reverse their natural ancient instinct to dive deeper into the earth. Instead of plunging into the wet, oxygen-deprived dark, they begin to actively sense the incredibly subtle chemical gradients of oxygen remaining in the upper layers of the mud. They bend, weave, and grow horizontally, or even curve upward toward the surface of the soil. They are feeling their way through the suffocating dark, desperately seeking the shallow, breathable pockets of air. They hold on patiently, navigating the flood with a quiet, unyielding determination, searching for the exact safe place where they can finally exhale. Just as those roots gently find their perfect open space to breathe, your own breath is naturally finding its most effortless, soothing rhythm. Deep and slow, in and out. There is nothing forced here, nothing rushed, just the simple, steady act of breathing in the dark, entirely at peace. This delicate, life-saving relationship with water takes on a monumental, almost mythical scale in the dry, sweeping plains of Madagascar and the African continent, home to the ancient towering baobab tree. With its massive, barrel-like trunk and strange, twisting branches scratching at the sky, it is revered as the tree of life. In a landscape defined by grueling months of burning heat and parched earth, the baobab does not just patiently absorb water, it physically transforms its own massive body to hold it. The wood of the baobab is not dense and hard like an oak. It is highly porous and beautifully spongy. When the torrential seasonal rains finally arrive, the tree acts as a giant living reservoir, drinking furiously from the saturated earth. It can pull up to 30,000 gallons of fresh water up into its core. As it drinks, the entire trunk visibly swells, stretching its thick grey bark to accommodate the rising tide within. Then, as the rains cease and the 10-month dry season sets in, the tree begins to slowly, imperceptibly shrink. It draws upon its internal ocean, keeping its leaves green and its flowers blooming while the surrounding savanna turns to dust. It is a quiet, majestic giant, holding an entire season of rain within its heart to outlast the burning sun. Water is not merely a resource to be stored. For some, it is the ultimate sprawling pathway to a new world. In the dense tropical forests that line the coasts of Central America, the towering Entada gigas vine produces massive woody pods that hang like huge pendulums above the rushing rivers. When these pods finally dry and open, they drop beautiful, polished, mahogany-coloured seeds known as sea hearts directly into the rapids. These seeds are swept out into the vast open ocean. They are flawlessly waterproofed and contain a highly specialised internal pocket of air, allowing them to remain incredibly buoyant in the heavy salt water. They can float on the global ocean currents for years, crossing entire hemispheres, drifting aimlessly beneath the blistering sun and the cold, turning stars. But they are not simply waiting to wash up on any random sandy beach. The sea heart is in a state of suspended sensory awareness. As it bobs in the ocean, it waits. It can physically sense the specific sudden drop in salinity when an ocean current finally pushes it into the mouth of a freshwater river on an entirely new continent. Only when it tastes the cool, sweet wash of fresh water does it break its long dormancy, recognizing that it has finally found a safe haven. It is a tiny, floating navigator crossing the world, waiting patiently through the years for the perfect taste of home. You're drifting too, safe and secure on a slow, gentle current of your own making. There is no destination you need to worry about, no distant shore you must reach right now. You can just let the heavy, peaceful waters of sleep carry you entirely, trusting the current to take you exactly where you need to be. While the sea bean rides the heavy, rolling currents of the ocean, other remarkable plants have learned to rely entirely on the invisible, weightless currents of the air. Clinging to the high electrical wires and the bare, sun-bleached branches of trees across the Americas lives the tillandsia, commonly known as the air plant. This stunning organism has completely abandoned the ancestral need to bury its roots in the heavy earth. Its small, wiry root system acts only as a physical anchor, a simple grappling hook to hold it steady in the breeze. To eat and to drink, it relies entirely on its delicate leaves. The surface of the tillandsia is covered in microscopic, silvery, cup-like scales called trichomes. When the wind blows, these scales act as tiny biological nets, physically trapping the drifting dust, the falling pollen, and the passing fog. The plant extracts its vital minerals, the trace amounts of calcium, potassium, and magnesium directly from the airborne dirt. It drinks the passing clouds and eats the invisible wind. It lives a life of absolute unburdened lightness, pulling its entire physical body out of the passing breeze, proving beautifully that you do not always need to be heavily grounded in the dirt to thrive and grow. Yet, for the vast majority of the green world that remains deeply grounded, the earth offers its own subtle, invisible forms of guidance. We know that roots can feel the steady pull of gravity and the damp promise of moisture, but the soil itself is also humming with a faint natural electricity. As water moves through porous layers of clay, sand, and stone, it generates delicate, shifting electrical fields. Plant roots possess a hidden, sensory superpower known as electrotropism. They can literally feel this subterranean electricity pulsing softly through the dark. If a growing root tip encounters a completely impenetrable barrier, like a buried boulder or a thick pipe, it does not just blindly scrape against it, wasting its precious energy in the dark. It reads the subtle distortion in the local electrical field. It senses the shape and density of the obstacle before making physical contact, and smoothly, gracefully alters its course to flow safely around it. The plant is navigating the pitch-black underworld by feeling the faint electric pulse of the earth itself, executing a silent, gliding movement through the magnetic dark. This profound, invisible sensitivity connects the plant not just to the soil beneath its roots, but all the way to the burning stars high above the canopy. Deep within the solid heartwood of the oldest trees on Earth, a silent cosmic record is being continuously written. Every year, as a tree grows, it adds a single, pale ring of new wood to its trunk. We have long known that these rings record the local story of the Earth, the years of heavy rainfall, the scars of a passing forest fire, or the long, silent ache of a drought. But they also record the violent weather of the galaxy. When a massive solar flare erupts on the surface of our Sun, it showers the Earth in high-energy cosmic rays, creating a sudden atmospheric spike in a rare isotope called carbon-14. As the tree breathes in the sky, it locks this cosmic carbon directly into its expanding wood. By carefully examining the rings of ancient oaks and bristlecone pines, scientists can perfectly map massive solar storms that occurred thousands of years ago, long before human history was ever recorded. The tree is a quiet biological astronomer. It stands perfectly still in the quiet of the forest, gazing upward, holding the physical, enduring memory of the burning stars safely within its solid, peaceful heart. That cosmic memory held within the ancient tree rings is not just a passive record of the past, it is an active, ongoing dialogue with the vast sky above. We know that the immense gravity of the moon pulls at the heavy oceans of the Earth, creating the rhythmic rolling rise and fall of the global tides. But this powerful lunar pull does not stop at the sandy shoreline. Inside the solid trunk of every living tree, there is a microscopic vertical ocean of sap flowing endlessly upward through the sapwood. As the moon slowly waxes and wanes in the night sky, its shifting gravitational field softly tugs at this internal column of water. Using highly sensitive laser-guided instruments, scientists have actually recorded trees physically swelling and shrinking in perfect harmonious time with the changing phases of the moon. The tree is experiencing its own internal high and low tides, a gentle, hydraulic breathing guided entirely by the silver light passing overhead. The water moves smoothly through the xylem, drawn upward by the invisible strings of lunar gravity. It is a profound realization that the exact same celestial forces moving the roaring seas are also gently lifting the quiet, sweet water inside the forest, connecting the smallest trembling green leaf to the slow, sweeping waltz of the solar system. This subtle alignment with the celestial bodies is not always driven by invisible gravity. Sometimes it's a breathtaking masterclass in geometry and solar tracking. In the sweeping, wind-blown prairies of North America, a tall, yellow-flowered stalk known as the compass plant holds a brilliant architectural secret. As its large, deeply lobed leaves emerge from the dark soil, they do not simply unfold in random directions. They twist precisely at their base, deliberately arranging their broad, flat surfaces to point exactly north and south. By standing perfectly on edge along this invisible magnetic meridian, the leaves easily catch the soft, cool, golden light of the early morning and the late afternoon. Yet, when the burning, harsh glare of the midday sun beats down from directly overhead, it only strikes the razor-thin, vertical edge of the leaf. This casts almost no shadow, and prevents the plant from overheating or losing its precious stored moisture to the wind. The plant acts as a living, breathing compass, navigating the intense heat of the open prairie by holding itself in perfect, calculated alignment with the magnetic poles of the Earth. As the compass plant finds its perfect protective alignment in the wind, you too can find your own center in the stillness. You're settling into a perfect alignment of rest. The heavy muscles of your back and shoulders can sink completely into the soft surface beneath you, releasing the day. The mind does not need to navigate, track or calculate anymore. It can simply align with the quiet, soothing gravity of sleep, letting the Earth hold you entirely in this peaceful space. While the compass plant actively avoids the glaring midday sun, other blossoms use the light in ways that are entirely invisible to human eyes, painting hidden messages across the meadow. Imagine a sprawling field of evening primrose or glowing yellow daisies. To our eyes, Their delicate petals are a solid, unbroken wash of soft, uniform colour. But to a foraging honeybee, whose compound eyes can naturally perceive the ultraviolet spectrum of light, these flowers look like brightly lit runways shining in the dark. The plants actively secrete unique, UV-absorbing chemicals in precise geometric patterns at the very centre of their blooms, leaving the outer edges highly reflective. This creates a bold, contrasting bullseye, a hidden, glowing map known as a nectar guide. These secret patterns point the insect directly toward the sweet, hidden cache of nectar and pollen. The flower is speaking a beautiful, secret language of light, painting brilliant, welcoming signs that only its most vital partners can read. It is a comforting reminder that the world is filled with hidden, luminous layers of meaning, invisible to us, but shining perfectly clear for those who know how to look. Down in the deepest, dimmest layers of the rainforest understory, where that ultraviolet light never penetrates and the heavy shadows are almost absolute, plants must capture whatever fractured light they can. Here, the broad, dark leaves of certain shade-dwelling begonias possess an adaptation that feels almost like magic. Their surface is covered in microscopic, perfectly curved epidermal cells that act exactly like tiny glass lenses. When a single, stray speck of dappled sunlight manages to pierce the thick canopy and strike the forest floor, these cellular lenses catch it. They instantly bend and refract the incredibly weak light, focusing it into an intense, concentrated beam directed precisely onto the energy-producing chloroplasts buried deep in the tissue below. The plant has literally evolved millions of microscopic magnifying glasses to harvest the shadows. It takes the absolute faintest glimmer of passing light and amplifies it into sustaining life. It teaches us that even when the light seems incredibly distant, fragmented, or impossibly faint, we possess the internal architecture to focus it, gather it, and let it nourish us deeply. This mastery over the physical elements allows life to flourish in landscapes that seem entirely hostile, such as the blistering, salt-crusted shores of the ocean. Growing straight out of the dry white coastal sand is a low, sprawling succulent known as the ice plant. It thrives in an environment where the heavy salt spray would instantly wither and burn any other green thing. As its roots absorb the highly saline water from the earth, the plant acts as a microscopic desalination facility, separating the toxic salt from the pure water. But rather than discarding the salt back into the earth, the plant pumps it directly into specialized balloon-like bladder cells that cover the entire surface of its thick leaves and stems. These tiny, swollen cells expand to their limit, locking the salt safely away from the delicate, working internal organs of the plant. In the midday sun, these thousands of microscopic, water-filled balloons catch the light, causing the entire plant to glitter and sparkle brightly, as if it were coated in crushed diamonds or pure morning frost. It transforms a harsh, burning toxin into a shimmering suit of armor, turning a life-threatening environment into an exquisite, glittering display of brilliant survival. Just as the ice plant transforms the harshness of its world into something beautiful and still, your own mind is currently softening the sharp edges of the day. The memories, the tasks, and the waking hours are losing their intensity, turning into soft, harmless, distant reflections. Your breath is a slow, rhythmic tide, washing gently over you, carrying away any lingering tension, leaving only a quiet, glittering peace in its wake. The quiet, unyielding strength found in that peace is mirrored perfectly by one of the most astonishing physical forces in the natural world, hidden deep inside the most fragile of forms. Picture a tiny, newly sprouted green seedling, its pale stem so delicate you could easily crush it between two fingers. Yet this fragile green thread can push its way straight upward through a thick layer of solid asphalt, or slowly crack a heavy concrete paving stone. This impossible feat is accomplished through the sheer, silent power of internal water, a botanical phenomenon known as turgor pressure. Inside the living cells of the young plant, specialized cavities called vacuoles draw in moisture, swelling outward like microscopic hydraulic pumps. As the water completely fills the enclosed space of the rigid cell walls, it creates an immense internal pressure that can reach up to hundreds of pounds per square inch. A pressure far greater than that inside a heavy truck tyre. By stacking millions of these microscopic water-swollen cells together in unison, the fragile chute exerts an immense, incredibly slow, and completely unstoppable upward force. It shatters solid stone without making a single sound. It is a stunning display of soft power, proving that incredible strength does not require hardness, speed, or violence. It only requires the steady, unrelenting accumulation of quiet, focused energy. When that quiet energy eventually bursts into full bloom, it releases its legacy into the wind in the form of fine, golden dust. We often think of pollen as something incredibly fragile, easily washed away by the spring rain or scattered into nothingness by the passing breeze. But wrapping every single microscopic grain of pollen is a deeply complex outer shell made of a biopolymer called sporopollenin. This material is one of the most indestructible, chemically inert organic substances ever discovered on planet Earth. It is completely immune to the harsh digestive acids of foraging insects. It cannot be dissolved by strong chemical solvents, and it utterly refuses to decay in the damp microbial earth. Because of this flawless, diamond-like armour, grains of pollen that blew through the air millions of years ago, long before humans ever walked the earth, are perfectly preserved in the deep geological strata. They sit quietly in the ancient rock, completely unchanged, holding the exact microscopic shape and memory of towering forests that vanished into dust eons ago. To look at a speck of modern pollen is to look at a structure designed for absolute immortality, a tiny golden time capsule built specifically to outlast the very mountains themselves. This profound ability to outlast time takes on an even more breathtaking reality in the frozen, blinding white expanse of Antarctica, the coldest and most unforgiving continent on the globe. Here, buried deep beneath thick, crushing layers of permafrost and ancient glacial ice, scientists discovered a small, dormant patch of Corypsodontia massifilum moss. Carbon dating revealed that this tiny green plant had been flash frozen and entirely entombed in the dark ice for over 1,500 years. It had lived through the rise and fall of ancient human empires, locked in a state of deep, silent, frozen suspension. In a highly delicate experiment, researchers carefully extracted the frozen core, placed the moss in a warm, gently lit incubator, and offered it a single, pure drop of fresh water. Astonishingly, the moss had not died. Within a few short weeks, the 1,500-year-old stems turned a vibrant, living green and began to push out new, healthy shoots. It simply picked up the thread of its life exactly where it had left off. It had defeated 15 centuries of freezing dark, waiting with infinite unbroken patience for the sun to return. It is the ultimate testament to the enduring, quiet spark of life that refuses to be extinguished. As you rest here tonight, safe, warm, and entirely secure, you too are engaging in a vital period of profound restoration. You do not need to hold tightly onto the years, the hours, or even the passing minutes. Time can simply freeze and fall softly away. Your body knows exactly how to preserve its vital energy, sinking smoothly into a deep, dreamless suspension, knowing perfectly well how to awaken refreshed when the morning light eventually returns. When that life is allowed to grow without the harsh constraints of ice or cold, it can stretch to unimaginable sweeping proportions. In the humid, misty plains of India, the towering banyan tree does not follow the traditional rules of what a single tree should be. It begins its life not in the dark ground, but high up in the sunlit branches of another tree, dropped there as a tiny seed by a passing bird. As the young banyan grows, it sends long, rope-like aerial roots plummeting straight down through the humid air. When these hanging roots finally touch the dark, rich soil, they thicken, harden, and miraculously transform into rigid wooden pillars. The tree then begins to actively expand outward horizontally, dropping more and more pillars from its branches to support its massive spreading canopy. Over the centuries, a single banyan tree can grow to encompass entire acres of land, its hundreds of trunk-like roots creating a vast shadowed labyrinth of natural corridors and quiet, echoing wooden rooms. It becomes an entire forest born entirely from a single seed. To walk beneath a great banyan is to walk safely inside a single vast organism that decided the sky was simply not enough, choosing instead to weave an endless living sanctuary of shadow and wood across the face of the earth. In the quiet, undisturbed corners of these expansive, sun-dappled environments, some plants use their immense energy not for massive size, but for a microscopic, breathtakingly precise illusion. The bee orchid, a small, delicate flower native to the meadows of Europe, has evolved an intricate strategy to ensure its survival, relying entirely on the art of perfect seduction. Its lower petal has been sculpted by millions of years of patient evolution to perfectly resemble the soft, plump abdomen of a female solitary bee. It grows fine, velvet-like hairs to flawlessly match the texture of the insect, and paints itself in deep, shimmering shades of brown and yellow. But the illusion is not just visual, it is intoxicatingly chemical. The orchid actively synthesizes and releases the exact complex chemical pheromones of a female bee ready to mate. When a male bee catches this irresistible scent on the breeze, he is drawn swiftly to the flower. He lands on the soft velvet petal, entirely convinced he has found a living partner in the grass. As he tries to embrace the flower, the orchid gently and swiftly dusts his head with 2 golden packets of pollen. Realizing his mistake, the bee flies away unharmed, carrying the vital pollen through the air to the next convincing illusion waiting in the meadow. It is a stunning display of botanical theatre, a plant that has learned to fluently speak both the chemical and visual language of the animal kingdom, choreographing a beautiful, harmless dance of survival in the soft, fading light of the afternoon. As that delicate, intricate dance unfolds in the quiet meadow, and the warm light slowly begins to shift and deepen into the rich velvet colours of the evening, the forest prepares once again for its long descent into the restorative dark. The brilliant illusions, the quiet hydraulic power, and the living compasses all begin to slowly power down, surrendering to the overwhelming, peaceful gravity of the coming night, drawing us further into the beautiful, unseen mysteries that wait in the deep shadows. As we reach the final step of our journey through this green and breathing world, we come at last to the most profound mystery of all, the secret of the Pando aspen grove's heartbeat, not in its branches, but in its ancient shared memory of the stars. In the quietest hours of the night, when the wind falls away and the forest becomes a cathedral of absolute silence, the trees are engaged in a miracle of atmospheric light that we are only just beginning to name. It is known as the green glow. Deep within the molecular structure of a leaf, the energy of the sun is never truly lost. During the long, bright hours of the day, the chlorophyll molecules absorb a tremendous amount of solar radiation. As the sun sets and the plant enters its deep nocturnal rest, it slowly and invisibly releases a tiny fraction of that stored energy back into the darkness in the form of infrared and near-infrared light. If we could see the world through a lens of heat and light, the entire forest would not be dark. It would be softly, steadily glowing, radiating the sun's warmth back to the cold night sky. This is the ultimate cycle of botanical generosity. The plant takes the fierce, distant energy of a star, holds it within its living body to build wood, fruit and life, and then gently breathes that light back into the universe while it sleeps. It is a quiet, eternal exhale of light, a final secret that tells us that life is not just a consumer of energy, but a keeper of it, a luminous bridge between the burning sun and the cool, resting earth. This soft biological glow is the forest's own way of saying that the light is never gone. It is simply being held, transformed, and shared in the stillness of the dark. And now, the journey is complete. The 101 wonders we have explored tonight have finished their long walk through your awareness. Just like the seeds resting in the ancient clay jars, or the roots finding their perfect electric path through the soil, these ideas do not need to be grasped or held tightly. You can let them go now. You can let them sink deep into the fertile dark of your memory, where they will settle and rest without any effort at all. What was meant for you will stay. What was meant to drift will drift. The forest is quiet now. The canopy is still. The heartbeat of the great trees has slowed to its deepest, most restorative rhythm, and you are perfectly invited to match that pace. Feel the profound weight of your body, as heavy and as secure as an ancient stone nestled in the moss. There is no more searching to do. There are no more mysteries to solve. The air around you is cool and clear, filled with the invisible, healing breath of the green world. With every slow, soft exhale, you're releasing the very last threads of the waking world. You're becoming part of the shadows, part of the silence, part of the deep, enduring peace that has existed since the first seed ever touched the earth. The room is dark. The world is soft. Your breath is a gentle wind through the leaves, slow and untroubled. Everything is supported. Everything is at rest. You're safe to let go. You're safe to drift. You're safe to sleep. And now, 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.